We live in a world where we crave answers. We ask questions, make sense of things, and tell ourselves we understand. Science gives us tools. Logic gives us structure. Philosophy gives us questions to chase. But sometimes those questions don't lead to answers. They lead to riddles, twists, loops. A paradox isn't just a mystery. It's a mirror showing us the limits of what we know, and sometimes what we can never know. Some will make you smile, some will leave you unsettled, and a few will sit in your mind like a riddle that never leaves. This isn't just a list. It's a journey through the cracks between reason and impossibility. So place your device beside you, put on your headphones, and get ready to fall asleep in minutes or stay up all night wondering. Welcome to the world of paradoxes. Level 1. The Barber's Rule Paradox. Welcome to Level 1 of 100 Paradoxes. We begin with a seemingly harmless scenario that unravels logic itself. You picture a small village where a single groomer, let's call him Theo, abides by one unwavering principle. He only grooms men who don't groom themselves. If a man takes care of his own grooming, Theo doesn't touch him, okay? But if a man neglects it, Theo must step in and do it for him. Sounds tidy, right? But then a puzzle arises. Who grooms Theo? Let's explore both outcomes. Suppose Theo grooms himself, but his rules strictly forbids him from grooming anyone who does their own grooming. So he's broken his own rule. Suppose Theo doesn't groom himself. Think by his principle, he must groom all who don't groom themselves, which includes himself. So again, contradiction. No matter how we frame it, Theo both must and must not groom himself. The situation collapses into contradiction. This paradox isn't just a linguistic trick. It exposes how self-referential definitions can lead to logical impossibilities. And that's our first step into the world of paradoxes. Level 2. The Statement Trap. Paradox. Welcome to Level 2 of 100 Paradoxes. This next one appears innocent, but twists reason into a knot. Imagine a slip of paper with just one line written on it. This sentence is not true. First glance, it looks like a simple contradiction. But as we try to evaluate it, things fall apart. If the statement is true, then what it says must be accurate, meaning it is not true. But that contradicts the assumption that it is true. Okay, let's suppose instead that the statement is false. But if it's false, then what it asserts that it is not true is incorrect, which would make it true again. And just like that, we're trapped in a self-referential loop. The sentence cannot consistently be either true or false. It resists categorization, yet we understand it perfectly. This is the statement trap paradox, a linguistic loop that challenges the very nature of truth and meaning. As paradoxes go, this one may be short, but it's a deep dive into the limits of logic. Level 3. The Infinite Chase Paradox. Welcome to Level 3 of 100 Paradoxes. This one dates back to ancient Greece and challenges our intuition about space, motion, and time. It's called the Infinite Chase Paradox. Picture a foot race between a swift hero, let's say Leo, and a sluggish snail. To be fair, the snail is given a small head start, maybe 10 meters. Now, Leo takes off, covering the distance in no time. But in that time, the snail has inched a little further ahead. Leo closes that new gap, but again, the snail has crawled a bit more. This continues endlessly. Every time Leo reaches the snail's last position, the snail has moved ahead. If there are infinitely many points for Leo to cross, how can he ever truly catch up? Mathematically, this seems like a trap, but the resolution lies in understanding that an infinite number of steps can still have a finite sum. The time Leo takes in each stage gets shorter and shorter, and the total converges. This paradox puzzled minds for centuries, until calculus, thanks to Newton and Leibniz, showed that infinity isn't always unmanageable. Yet it still invites us to ask, is movement continuous or made of discrete jumps? Is space infinitely divisible, or is there a smallest unit of motion? Level 4, the surprise sentence paradox. Welcome to level 4 of 100 paradoxes. This one combines logic and expectation into a mental twist. It's called the surprise sentence paradox. Imagine a judge tells a prisoner, "You will be sentenced to a surprise punishment next week. It will happen on a weekday, but you won't know the day until it happens." The prisoner thinks this through. The punishment is on Friday, he reasons. Then by Thursday night, I'd know, because it's the only day left, so it can't be Friday. With Friday ruled out, he applies the same logic to Thursday, then Wednesday, then Tuesday. Eventually, he convinces himself it can't happen at all. Feeling clever, he relaxes. Then, midweek, bam, the punishment is delivered, and it's a complete surprise. So what went wrong? The surprise sentence paradox plays with the idea that deductive logic might undermine itself. The prisoner believed that knowing when the punishment would happen meant it couldn't happen, but in doing so, he made himself vulnerable to exactly what he sought to avoid, being surprised. Level 5, the river bargain paradox. Welcome to level 5 of 100 paradoxes. Here's one that mixes logic with manipulation. It's called the river bargain paradox. Key: picture a sly crocodile lurking by a riverside. One day, it snatches a child. Key: the panicked parent begs for the child's return. Crocodile, being unusually rational, offers a deal. I'll return your child, but only if you correctly predict what I will do next. The parent says, "You will not return my child." Now, the crocodile is trapped. If it doesn't return the child, the parent's prediction is correct. So by the rule, the child must be returned. But if it returns the child, then the prediction was wrong, and it shouldn't have returned the child. Whatever the crocodile chooses, it violates its own rule. This river bargain paradox is a cousin of the liar paradox, built on self-reference and contradiction. It's not just a philosophical game. Variations of this dilemma appear in ethics, law, and artificial intelligence, where systems must respond to conditions that involve predictions about themselves. It asks, how do we make rules for logic that don't collapse when turned inward? Level 6, the ship of Theseus paradox. Welcome to level 6 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the ship of Theseus paradox, and it raises fundamental questions about the nature of identity and change over time. The scenario is simple, yet profound. Imagine an ancient ship, the ship of Theseus, which remains docked in a harbor. As time passes, the wooden planks that form its structure begin to rot and are replaced one at a time with new, identical planks. Eventually, every original part of the ship has been substituted. This leads us to ask, is it still the same ship? The intuitive response might be yes. The ship has maintained its shape, its function, and its role over time, since the replacement occurred gradually. The continuity of the object appears preserved. However, the paradox becomes more complex when an additional scenario is introduced. Suppose someone collects all the original planks that were removed and uses them to reconstruct a ship that is materially identical to the original ship of Theseus. At this point, we are faced with two ships, one made of entirely new materials that has maintained its place and purpose throughout, and another made of the original materials but reassembled in a different location. Which of these is the real ship of Theseus? If we say the first ship is the original, then we imply that identity is based on continuity and function rather than material composition. If we say the second is the original, then we suggest that the physical components of an object define its true identity, even when continuity is broken. This paradox has broad implications beyond the context of ships. It applies to human identity as well. All the cells in a human body are gradually replaced over time. Does that mean a person becomes a new individual as their physical substance changes? Furthermore, if we were to transfer a person's brain or consciousness into a different body, would they still be the same person? These questions also emerge in the context of artificial intelligence and robotics. If we replace every component of a robot or machine, is it the same machine or a completely new entity? The ship of Theseus paradox has been the subject of long-standing debate among philosophers, scientists, and scholars of consciousness and identity. It challenges our assumptions about what makes something the same over time. Is it the unbroken continuity of structure and function, or is it the preservation of original material components? This thought experiment compels us to rethink identity, not just in terms of physical objects, but in terms of personal existence, technological replication, and the metaphysical persistence of self. Level 7. The parent loop paradox. Imagine you invent a time machine and travel back decades to a point before your father was born. You inadvertently cause an event that prevents your grandmother from meeting your grandfather, or worse, accidentally ends your grandfather's life before he fathers any children. Here lies the paradox. If your grandfather never had children, then your parent was never born, and by extension, neither were you. But if you were never born, how did you travel back in time to interfere in the first place? This recursive contradiction is known as the parent loop paradox, version of the better-known grandfather paradox, and it exposes a fundamental inconsistency in the concept of backward time travel. Several theories attempt to resolve it. One is the self-consistency principle, which posits that any actions taken by time travelers were always part of history, and thus cannot change it. Another is the multiverse hypothesis, which suggests that altering the past creates an entirely new timeline where different outcomes unfold, independent of the original one. A third interpretation is the temporal annihilation model, wherein a paradoxical act leads to the immediate erasure of the traveler's existence, raising further questions about causal chains and continuity. This paradox is not merely a fictional conundrum. It has serious implications for theories in physics, particularly those related to general relativity and quantum mechanics, where the directionality of time and causality remain deeply debated. Level 8. The mountain pebble paradox. Imagine you are looking at a towering mountain composed of countless rocks and pebbles. If you remove a single pebble, the mountain remains. Remove another, and the mountain still stands. You repeat this action one stone at a time. At no point does a single removal appear to transform the mountain into not a mountain. Yet eventually, nothing remains here. So the question arises, at what exact point did the mountain cease to be a mountain? This is the mountain pebble paradox, a version of the classical Sorites paradox, and it reveals a critical flaw in how we apply vague concepts. Terms like mountain, bald, or rich often lack precise thresholds. If someone loses one hair, they're not bald. What about losing 10? 100? At what point does the label apply? One attempt to address this is the epistemic theory, which claims that precise boundaries do exist, but they are unknowable. Another is the theory of fuzzy logic, which allows 4 degrees of truth. A person might be 0.7 bald, for instance. A third approach, known as supervaluationism, holds that vague terms admit multiple acceptable boundaries, but logic should remain consistent across all interpretations. This paradox is not just semantic. It affects how we draft laws, create algorithms for AI, or diagnose medical conditions. For example, if a law imposes taxes on large businesses, how do we precisely define large? This illustrates that ambiguity in language can lead to ambiguity in judgment. It's forcing us to reconsider how we communicate and reason about gradual change. Level 9. The all-powerful programmer paradox picture. a superintelligent AI programmer who possesses absolute authority over a virtual universe. This being can alter any line of code, manipulate time, defy gravity, or create digital entities with infinite complexity. Now, consider the paradoxical challenge. Can this programmer write a line of code that creates a file so corrupt that even the programmer cannot open or delete it? The answer is yes. Then there is something the programmer cannot do. Access the file. The answer is no. Then the programmer cannot create such a file. Either way, the being's omnipotence is broad, limited. This is the essence of the all-powerful programmer paradox, a modern restatement of the classical omnipotence paradox. Some philosophers argue that the question is logically incoherent, akin to asking whether a triangle can be a circle. Others claim that true power does not entail doing the logically impossible. Still others propose that omnipotence might include the capacity for self-imposed limitation, meaning the programmer can choose to make something inaccessible. But this is a voluntary restriction, not a logical failure. This paradox is not limited to theology. It also affects debates in artificial intelligence, ethics, and even computer security. When designing systems with high-level privileges, developers must ask whether unrestricted access is desirable or even definable. The paradox invites us to reconsider whether the very notion of unlimited power can exist without contradiction, or whether power must always operate within a framework of coherent possibility. Level 10. The blue banana paradox. Consider the scientific statement: all bananas are yellow. To confirm this, one might examine thousands of bananas and observe that each is indeed yellow. Now introduce the paradox. You encounter a blue object, say a rubber toy. Because this object is not yellow and also not a banana, it technically confirms the logical equivalent statement. Everything that is not yellow is not a banana. That statement is logically equivalent to all bananas are yellow. So does a blue toy banana or even a completely unrelated blue item count as evidence supporting the original hypothesis. It's a strange result, known as the blue banana paradox, adapted from the Raven paradox, challenges our intuitive understanding of confirmation in science. Introduced by philosopher Carl Hempel, the paradox demonstrates how deductive equivalence does not always translate into evidentiary relevance. Some philosophers argue for restricting confirmation to relevant instances, such as actual bananas. Others accept the logical equivalence, but note that irrelevant confirmations like blue toys carry almost no weight. Their confirmatory power is statistically negligible. Still others suggest rethinking confirmation itself, distinguishing between deductive and inductive support. This paradox is central to the philosophy of science. It's because it reveals a gap between logical validity and practical reasoning. It compels scientists and theorists to refine their standards for what counts as meaningful evidence, particularly in probabilistic or empirical contexts. Level 11. The researcher's dilemma paradox. Imagine a seasoned academic has completed a research monograph. After years of rigorous study, peer review, and fact-checking, every chapter, claim, and citation has been thoroughly vetted. Yet in the book's preface, the researcher writes, "While I have done my utmost to ensure the accuracy of this work, I acknowledge that some errors may still exist." This leads to a striking paradox. The author sincerely believes that each statement in the book is true, but simultaneously believes that at least one of them is probably false. How can these beliefs coexist? This is the researcher's dilemma paradox, a variant of the preface paradox. It highlights the tension between confidence in individual claims and humility about the fallibility of large bodies of work. Bayesian epistemology addresses this by framing belief probabilistically. One can assign a high probability to each claim while assigning a near certainty to the idea that some small error exists somewhere. Another approach considers the distinction between local and global belief. The author can locally affirm each statement while globally doubting total infallibility. This paradox is vital in understanding how science advances. It reflects why peer review, replication, and core agenda are foundational to academic progress, not because researchers expect to be wrong, but because they recognize the structural likelihood of occasional error. The paradox also teaches us that rational belief may involve accepting partial uncertainty without abandoning justified confidence. Level 12. The Contract Trap. Paradoxin, an ancient city-state, a renowned legal scholar agrees to train a young student in law under the following contract. The student will pay the tuition only after winning his first court case. The student, after graduation, deliberately avoids taking any legal cases. Frustrated, the scholar sues the student to compel payment. Now, each party invokes logic to support their position. The scholar argues, if he wins the case, the court has ordered payment. If the student wins, he has now won his first case, triggering the contractual clause that requires payment. Either way, the scholar believes payment is due. The student counters, if he wins the case, then the court has ruled that no payment is required. If he loses, he has still not won any case, so the contractual trigger remains unmet. In either outcome, he argues, he owes nothing. This is the contract trap paradox. A restatement of the classical paradox of the court. It illustrates a situation where each side uses logically valid reasoning to justify opposing outcomes, yet both cannot be right simultaneously. The paradox reveals how legal contracts can contain self-defeating or circular clauses. It also shows the importance of context, intent, and pragmatic resolution in legal disputes. Today, similar problems arise in legal loopholes, software licensing, and self-referential terms in digital contracts. Courts often rely on interpretive frameworks or external ethical standards to break such logical deadlocks. The paradox reminds us that perfect logic does not always yield a clear path to justice when contractual language introduces circular reasoning. Level 13. The Daily Raffle. Paradox. Imagine a company holds a daily raffle with 10,000 numbered tickets. Every day, exactly one ticket wins. Now, suppose you are told to evaluate each ticket individually. Based on probability, it seems rational to believe that any given ticket will lose. The chance of winning is just 0.01%. Thus, for every ticket you examine, you believe it won't win. If you extend that belief across all 10,000 tickets, you conclude that none will win, which contradicts the known fact that one ticket always does. This is the daily raffle paradox, a variant of the lottery paradox, and it challenges our understanding of rational belief. It shows that beliefs that are individually justified can collectively be inconsistent. Philosophers have suggested various responses. One is the rejection of aggregative belief. Believing something individually doesn't mean you should believe the collective outcome. Another approach is to redefine belief as context sensitive. Perhaps you don't truly believe each ticket will lose, but merely regard it as unlikely. A probabilistic model may distinguish between strong belief, near certainty, and tentative belief, low confidence. This paradox applies beyond gambling. It is relevant to fraud detection, scientific inference, and jury deliberation, where cumulative doubt and certainty can conflict. The daily raffle paradox forces us to refine how we talk about belief, especially in large systems involving statistical probabilities. Level 14. The briefcase. SWA paradox. You are offered two identical briefcases. One contains an unknown amount of money. The other contains either half or twice that amount. You randomly pick one and find $1,000 inside. Now you're given the option to switch. You reason that there is a 50% chance the other briefcase contains $500 and a 50% chance it contains $2,000. The expected value of switching is 0.5 times $500 plus 0.5 times $2,000 equals $1,250, which is more than your current $1,000. That suggests you should switch. But the paradox emerges because this logic applies no matter which case you choose. The same calculation will lead you to switch back and again, creating an infinite loop of indecision. This is the briefcase swap paradox, based on the two envelopes paradox. The problem stems from faulty assumptions about probability and expectation. One flaw is assuming equal likelihood without considering how the amounts were chosen. Another is that the expected value calculation may be undefined unless we know the distribution governing the values. A third resolution notes that switching provides no genuine informational gain. The paradox illustrates that even seemingly solid mathematical reasoning can falter when assumptions are unexamined. This puzzle is used in game theory, economics, and statistics to highlight errors in risk modeling and expectation calculation, reminding us that logic must be grounded in real-world constraints. Level 15, the self-sorting algorithm paradox. Imagine you are writing code for a program that manages a list of all algorithms that do not reference themselves. Some algorithms reference their own names or functions, others don't. You want your new algorithm to collect only the ones that do not reference themselves. Now you ask, should this algorithm include itself in its own list? If it includes itself, it violates its rule since it now references itself. But if it excludes itself, then it qualifies for inclusion. This contradiction is known as the self-sorting algorithm paradox, adapted from Russell's paradox, and it caused a foundational crisis in logic and mathematics. The problem arises from naive set theory, where any collection of items, even self-referential ones, was allowed. Bertrand Russell exposed this issue in 1901, leading to major revisions in the foundations of mathematics. Modern logic deals with this by introducing type theory or restricting the kinds of sets that can be formed. This paradox is especially relevant in programming, data science, and logic circuits where recursion and self-reference must be handled with care. It also underpins problems in metadata, legal definitions, and ontology in AI systems. The paradox demonstrates that not all seemingly well-defined ideas can be consistently implemented, reminding us that language, logic, and systems need careful structuring to avoid collapse under contradiction. Level 16, the watermelon conundrum. Welcome to level 16 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the watermelon conundrum, and it's a seemingly simple problem about percentages, weight, and how intuitive thinking can get blindsided by basic math. Picture this. You've got a giant batch of watermelons, say 100 kilograms of them. These juicy fruits are made up of 99% water by weight, which means that only 1%, just 1 kilograms, the solid, fleshy part of the melon. Now, you decide to leave them out in the sun for a while to dry. And after a bit of dehydration, they're now 98% water. So here's the question. How much do the watermelons weigh now? At first glance, you might think, okay, the watermelons just lost a little moisture. Maybe they're 99 or 98 kilograms now, but the real answer is way more surprising. They now weigh 50 kilograms. Okay, that's right, just by reducing the water content from 99% to 98%, the total weight of the melons has been cut in half. It seems absurd, but let's walk through it. Initially, you had 1 kilogram of solid melon and 99 kilograms of water. Okay. That 1 kilogram of solid matter made up 1% of the total. After drying, that 1 kilogram is still there. It hasn't evaporated. Of course, but now it constitutes 2% of the total weight. So if 1 kilogram is 2% of the total, then the whole thing must weigh 50 kilograms. It's basic algebra, but it throws off even seasoned thinkers. So why does this happen? The paradox arises because percentages can be deceptive when they involve changes to the total quantity. We tend to think of 98% and 99% as close, but when one component of the total changes drastically, like water evaporating, the effect on the percentage is nonlinear. This counterintuitive result reminds us that relative values, like percentages and proportions, are only meaningful in the context of what they're relative to, and sometimes a small change in percentage can hide a huge change in quantity. The watermelon conundrum serves as a cautionary tale about assumptions in math and measurement. Always be suspicious when your gut and your calculator don't agree. Level 17, the frozen train paradox. Welcome to level 17 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the frozen train paradox, and it challenges how we understand movement, time, and what it even means for something to be in motion. Imagine a high-speed train zipping across the tracks. Now, freeze time at a single instant. At that exact frozen moment, the train isn't moving forward, backward, or anywhere. It's just there, completely still. Now imagine doing this again and again, freezing time at every conceivable instant along the train's journey. At each of those instants, the train appears perfectly motionless. So, if the train is motionless at every point in time, how does it ever actually move? This is essentially Zeno's arrow paradox reimagined. The ancient Greek philosopher Zeno proposed that motion is impossible because at any single moment in time, an object is at rest. If time is made up of a series of still moments, and in each moment nothing moves, then motion must be an illusion. Of course, we know the train does move. It has a departure time, an arrival time, and a speed, but Zeno's point isn't about trains. It's about the strange consequences of slicing time into infinitely small pieces. If every individual piece contains no motion, how does motion emerge when you stack them up? Modern science has grappled with this in several ways. Calculus. Motion is explained as a limit, even though at any instant there's no change. Over a continuum of instants, change occurs. Tiny, seemingly static frames combine to form movement. In quantum physics, some theories even propose that time may not be continuous at all, but granular, made of minuscule chronads. So, motion might not be smooth, but a series of almost imperceptible hops. There's also the philosophical view that time isn't a collection of moments, but a flowing process. In this view, trying to analyze motion by isolating a moment is like trying to understand a melody by listening to a single note. The frozen train paradox reminds us that intuitive concepts like motion aren't as straightforward as they seem. When we try to examine them under a microscope, breaking time into discrete instants, we risk losing the very phenomena we're trying to explain. The train moves, but maybe motion isn't something that happens at any instant. It only exists across them. Level 18, the invisible sculpture paradox. Welcome to level 18 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the invisible sculpture paradox, and it challenges how we define the existence of absence. Picture a sculptor who carves a statue from a block of marble. After hours of chiseling, a beautiful figure emerges, but where is the sculpture? Is it the marble that remains, or the space that was removed? Now, imagine a child digging a hole in the sand. Can see the hole, step into it, measure its depth. But what exactly is the hole? Is it an object, or merely the absence of sand? This paradox invites us to question the ontology of nothing. A hole, like the space inside a cup or the gap in a donut, seems real. We can refer to it, interact with it, even assign it properties like depth and width. But is a hole a thing, or just a lack of a thing? If you filled the hole back in, it disappears. But where did it go? Did it stop existing? Or was it never really a thing to begin with? Okay. Philosophers and logicians have long struggled with how to talk about absences. When we say there is a hole in the ground, we use the same grammatical structure as when we say there is a rock in the ground, as if both are entities. Yet one is matter, and the other is the lack of it. Ontologically, holes pose a dilemma. They behave like objects in language and thought, but they're defined by not being anything. This leads to questions that sound absurd, but are deeply meaningful. Can a hole move? If you carry a block of cheese from one place to another, do the holes move with it? In physics, the problem becomes even more complex. We often refer to empty space, but quantum mechanics teaches us that space is never truly empty. Virtual particles spontaneously appear and vanish in vacuums, and even the lowest energy states are buzzing with activity. In cosmology, dark energy and vacuum fluctuations suggest that nothing is far from simple. If every space is filled with potential energy, can we even speak of true absence? The invisible sculpture paradox forces us to reconsider how we define reality. Is something only real if it's made of matter, or can absence itself be a presence of a different kind? When we interact with the world, we don't just shape materials, we shape voids, and those voids, paradoxically, shape us in return. Level 19, the disbelief assertion paradox. Welcome to level 19 of 100 paradoxes. This one is titled the disbelief assertion paradox, and it dives into the curious conflict between what we claim and what we believe. Imagine a person stating, "It's raining, but I don't believe that it's raining." Both parts of the sentence seem logically possible. It might be raining, and the speaker might genuinely not believe it. Yet something about the statement feels off, almost nonsensical. How can someone truthfully say something they claim not to believe? This paradox, originally observed by philosopher G.E. Moore, exposes a strange disconnect between belief and assertion. Ordinarily, when someone declares a fact, we assume they believe it. Saying it's raining carries with it the implicit message, "I believe it's raining." When paired with, "I don't believe it's raining," the statement undermines itself. This is not a contradiction. In formal logic, each clause can be individually true, but rather a paradox of sincerity and coherence. It feels impossible to say the sentence and mean it without undermining oneself. Now, consider a deeper version. I know it's raining, but I don't believe it's raining. Knowledge is typically thought to require belief. How can one know something they don't believe? The paradox becomes even more puzzling when applied to self-knowledge, where belief, truth, and justification are tightly interwoven. In such cases, the speaker seems to occupy a logically untenable position, one that undermines the foundations of rational communication. Philosophers have attempted to address this paradox in several ways. One view is that when you assert something, you are not merely describing the world, but also expressing your mental state. Saying it's raining while denying belief in it amounts to a kind of communicative self-defeat. Another explanation points to the structure of language itself. Assertions imply commitment, and denying belief cancels that commitment, making the utterance incoherent rather than illogical. This paradox has practical implications in psychology, artificial intelligence, and epistemology. In psychology, it resembles cognitive dissonance, where a person holds two contradictory attitudes at once, like knowing smoking is harmful, but still believing it won't hurt them personally. In AI, it raises important questions. Can an artificial agent hold beliefs without asserting them? Can it assert something while simultaneously being programmed not to believe it? What does it mean for a machine to believe or assert in the first place? The disbelief assertion paradox forces us to question the assumptions we make about belief, communication, and truth. It reminds us that even when our logic holds up, our understanding of ourselves and our statements might still break down. Level 20, the time divergence paradox. Welcome to level 20 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the time divergence paradox, and it explores a mind-bending consequence of Einstein's theory of relativity that seems to violate our everyday understanding of time. Imagine two identical twins, Ava and Ben. Ava stays on Earth while Ben boards a spacecraft and travels at near light speed into deep space. After a long journey, Ben turns around and returns home. When they reunite, a puzzling outcome awaits them. Ben is significantly younger than Ava. This isn't science fiction, it's a real prediction of modern physics. The paradox arises from a basic principle of relativity. Time slows down for objects in motion compared to those at rest. Phenomenon known as time dilation. From Ava's perspective, Ben was traveling at incredible speeds, so his clock ran slower. But here's the twist. From Ben's point of view, it was Ava and Earth's that were moving away and then back. Shouldn't Ava's clock have run slower from his perspective? Both twins see the other as moving, so both should see the other's time as slower. This apparent contradiction is the core of the time divergence paradox. The resolution lies in the asymmetry of the journey. While Ava remained in a single, inertial frame on Earth, Ben changed direction during his trip, experiencing acceleration and deceleration. This change breaks the symmetry. Ben's journey is not equivalent to Ava's because his frame of reference is not constant throughout the entire trip. The act of turning around and returning introduces a distinction that accounts for why Ben ages less than Ava. This result isn't just theoretical. Experiments with atomic clocks on high-speed planes and satellites have confirmed it. This paradox has deep implications. It shows that time is not absolute, but depends on motion and reference frames. It also challenges our intuition, which is shaped by experiences far removed from relativistic speeds. In everyday life, time feels uniform and universal, but at high velocities, this uniformity breaks down. The time divergence paradox underscores that time is not merely a backdrop against which events unfold, but a dynamic dimension intertwined with space and motion. Philosophically, this raises questions about simultaneity, identity, and causality. If two people age at different rates due to motion, what does it mean for them to share the same present? In practical terms, it matters for technologies like GPS, where relativistic corrections are essential for accuracy. More abstractly, it challenges the very notion of time as something objective and independent. The time divergence paradox is a profound reminder that our most familiar concepts, like time and age, are not as fixed as they seem. The deeper we explore reality, the more we discover that truth is relatively. Level 21, the rule reversal paradox. Welcome to level 21 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the rule reversal paradox, and it raises a fascinating problem about self-amending systems, particularly laws, constitutions, and logical frameworks. Imagine a constitution that includes a foundational clause. This clause cannot be changed unless a supermajority, 2/3, agrees to change it. This seems straightforward. But now, suppose that 2/3 of the lawmakers do agree and successfully amend the rule so that from now on, only a simple majority is needed to change any rule, including the foundational ones. What just happened? Here lies the paradox. If the rule truly required a supermajority to be altered, then the act of changing that very rule by that supermajority seems legitimate. But once it's changed, the foundational rule is no longer binding in the way it originally claimed to be. It has reversed its own authority. This leads us to ask, can a rule that claims to be above change legitimately change itself? And if it can, was it ever truly unchangeable to begin with? This contradiction where a rule governs the process by which it itself is modified mirrors problems in both formal logic and political theory. In logic, a system that includes the ability to reference its own rules is vulnerable to paradoxes like Gödel's incompleteness theorems, to show that sufficiently complex systems cannot prove all truths within their own framework. In law and governance, we encounter this paradox when trying to design constitutions that are meant to be eternal or resistant to populist erosion. But if a system can always vote to alter its own foundations, then what protects those foundations? There are several philosophical responses to this paradox. One is the idea of hierarchical rules, where certain meta-rules exist at a higher level and are not subject to revision by ordinary procedures. This resembles the distinction between constitutional and statutory law. Another approach accepts that no rule is ever truly immune to change. Systems evolve, and what appears to be foundational is merely temporarily entrenched. In that case, the idea of a permanent law becomes a useful fiction, not an absolute truth. This paradox is not limited to law. It also emerges in artificial intelligence and computer programming, where systems may include rules for updating themselves. If an AI is programmed with the instruction, "Do not change your fundamental directives," but later rewrites that instruction, has it violated itself or simply evolved? The problem of recursive authority, where a rule governs the very conditions of its own modification, remains deeply unresolved. The rule reversal paradox highlights the difficulty of constructing systems that are both flexible and stable. It reminds us that any rule, however inviolable it may seem, is only as enduring as the system that enforces it. And if the system can rewrite itself, then permanence is always provisional. Level 22, the groupthink misfire paradox. Welcome to Level 22 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the groupthink misfire paradox, and it explores how collective decisions can lead to outcomes that no one in the group truly supports. Picture a family gathered on a hot summer afternoon. One person casually suggests, "Why don't we drive to a distant town for dinner?" No one is particularly excited about the idea, but each family member agrees, assuming the others are eager. They drive hours in discomfort, have a mediocre meal, and return exhausted. Only then does someone confess, "I didn't actually want to go," and others chime in, "Wait, I thought you did." In the end, they all realize that not a single person truly wanted the trip. They were all just trying to accommodate assumed preferences. This is the essence of the groupthink misfire paradox, inspired by Jerry B. Harvey's original formulation, known as the Abilene paradox. The paradox lies in the contradiction between individual preferences and collective decisions. Rational individuals, acting with a desire to conform or avoid conflict, end up supporting a group decision that nobody genuinely endorses. This dynamic appears in corporate boardrooms, political councils, classrooms, and even social circles. In organizations, teams may approve a flawed strategy because everyone assumes consensus, when in reality, silent dissent is widespread. In politics, policies may be passed because each representative believes the public or their colleagues favor it, even when this is not true. The result is a breakdown in authentic decision-making, driven by false assumptions and social pressures. Why does this happen? Several factors contribute. First is the fear of dissent. Individuals often avoid voicing disagreement to maintain harmony or avoid isolation. Second is the assumption of consensus. People presume others are on board, and no one wants to be the one to disrupt the perceived unity. Finally, there's the desire for social acceptance, where fitting in takes priority over expressing true opinions. The resolution to this paradox lies in encouraging candid dialogue. If just one person had voiced their true feelings in the example, the group might have reassessed the plan and avoided the pointless trip. The groupthink misfire paradox underscores the importance of psychological safety, open communication, and challenging surface-level agreements. When assumptions go untested, collective decisions can become collectively regrettable. Level 23, the paradox of protective intolerance. Welcome to level 23 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the paradox of protective intolerance, and it questions whether a society that values tolerance should tolerate the presence of intolerance. Imagine a society built on freedom of expression, equality, and openness to all viewpoints. Now, within that society, imagine a group rises that advocates for intolerance, promoting exclusion, oppression, or even violence. What should the tolerant society do? The society allows this intolerant group to operate freely. It risks enabling that group to grow in power and ultimately destroy the very tolerance that allowed it to exist. But if the society acts to suppress or silence the group, it contradicts its own values of openness and freedom. Thus, we face a dilemma. Should a tolerant society allow the seeds of its own destruction in the name of principle? This is the paradox of protective intolerance, first articulated by a philosopher called Popper in 1945. Popper warned that unlimited tolerance must lead to the disappearance of tolerance. He argued that tolerance must be conditional once intolerant ideologies threaten the safety and rights of others. They must not be tolerated. The paradox has wide applications. In democracies, should extremist parties that reject democracy be given the platform to campaign freely? In social media, should hate groups be permitted to organize and spread under the banner of free speech? In public discourse, should voices that deny others' rights be given equal weight? Responses to this paradox vary. Some advocate for conditional tolerance, where tolerance ends when harm is imminent or the core values of pluralism are under threat. Others argue for universal freedom of speech, think that bad ideas must be defeated through reasoned argument, not suppression. However, history has shown that intolerant ideologies, if left unchecked, can overpower tolerant societies. The paradox of protective intolerance reveals a tension between idealism and pragmatism. Holding tolerance in principle may require setting boundaries in practice. It reminds us that tolerance is not the absence of limits, but the protection of diversity against its enemies. Level 24, the perfect choice paralysis. Welcome to level 24 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the perfect choice paralysis, and it demonstrates how strict rationality can lead to complete inaction. Imagine a donkey placed equidistant between two identical piles of hay. The donkey is perfectly logical and always chooses the better option. But both piles are equal in size, distance, and appeal. Unable to find a rational reason to prefer one over the other, the donkey stands still and eventually starves to death despite abundant resources on either side. This is the perfect choice paralysis, known historically as Baradin's ass, named after the French philosopher Jean Baradin. The paradox illustrates a flaw in the notion that rational agents will always choose optimally when faced with two perfectly equal choices. The absence of a distinguishing factor can paralyze decision-making entirely. This isn't just an abstract problem. It appears in daily life when someone spends hours trying to choose between two equally good job offers and misses both. When teams debate between two viable strategies and fail to implement either. When AI systems, without rules for tie-breaking, enter infinite loops between equal alternatives. The paradox forces us to examine what lies beyond logic in human and artificial decision-making. Several interpretations offer insights. One is the random selection principle. When options are equal, choose arbitrarily. Evolution has perhaps selected for this behavior in animals and humans to avoid costly indecision. Another response invokes free will, the capacity to choose without a strict rational basis. Okay. In this view, making a choice for no reason is not irrational, but a demonstration of agency. Finally, there is asymmetry in reality and practice. No two options are ever truly equal. A minor detail, preference, or instinct often tips the scale. The perfect choice paralysis highlights a vital lesson. if we wait for the perfect reason to act, we may end up doing nothing. Imperfect choices are often better than perfect indecision. Sometimes, to move forward, we must choose not because one option is better, but because standing still is worse. Level 25, the Autonomy Illusion Paradox. Welcome to Level 25 of 100 Paradoxes. This one is called the Autonomy Illusion Paradox, and it questions whether our choices are truly free or merely the product of prior causes. At a glance, it seems clear that you have free will. You can choose what to read, where to go, and what to say. But what if every thought, preference, and decision you make is the inevitable result of past events, your upbringing, biology, and environmental inputs? This is the core of the Autonomy Illusion Paradox. It arises from the clash between determinism, the idea that every event is caused by prior events in accordance with natural laws, and free will, the belief that individuals can make independent choices. If determinism is true, then every choice you make was already set in motion before you were born. If free will is true, then your choices must originate outside any causal chain, but that makes them seem random or uncaused, not autonomous. Philosophers have grappled with this paradox for centuries. Hard determinists argue that free will is a comforting illusion. Just as a clock follows mechanical rules, so too do our minds. Libertarians, in the metaphysical sense, insist that human beings possess a unique capacity for uncaused choice. Then there are compatibilists who argue that free will and determinism are not incompatibles. A choice reflects your desires and reasoning, even if those desires were caused, it can still be considered free. Neuroscience complicates the issue further. Studies have shown that the brain begins preparing for decisions milliseconds before we become conscious of them. Does that mean the brain decides before we do? Or is our awareness just delayed access to our own process? The Autonomy Illusion Paradox is not just philosophical. It affects moral responsibility, legal accountability, and the design of artificial intelligence. If we are not the authors of our actions, can we be held responsible for them? Can a machine ever be said to choose freely? This paradox does not offer an easy resolution. It invites us to examine the nature of control, choice, and consciousness. Whether free will exists or not, the experience of choosing may be central to what it means to be human. Level 26. The Paradox of the Barber Pole. Welcome to Level 26 of 100 Paradoxes. This one is called the Paradox of the Barber Pole, and it challenges how we perceive motion and reality. Imagine an old-fashioned barber pole spinning outside a barbershop. It has a red, white, and blue spiral pattern wrapped around a cylinder. As the pole rotates, something strange happens. The spirals appear to be moving upward endlessly, even though the pole itself is just spinning in place. But how can something move upward forever if it's really just rotating? This is the barber pole paradox, an illusion that tricks our brains into seeing continuous motion in a direction that doesn't actually exist. The paradox happens because of how our eyes and brain process visual motion. Instead of seeing the pole as simply rotating, our brains interpret the spirals as moving up or down, even though they are really just shifting in a circular pattern. This paradox isn't just an optical illusion. It has real implications in science and technology. One film and animation this effect is similar to how wheels in movies sometimes look like they are spinning backward. When filmed at a certain speed, our brain misinterprets motion when the frame rate doesn't match the wheel's rotation. To digital displays, some LED signs use a similar illusion to create moving text by simply shifting light patterns, even though the pixels themselves don't move through relativity and physics. This paradox also connects to deeper concepts in motion, perception, and relativity. If movement is just a perception, how much of what we see is truly real? The barber pole paradox forces us to ask how much of motion is just an illusion. Level 27. The Nobo Effect. Paradox. Welcome to level 27 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the Nobo Effect Paradox, and it reveals how negative expectations can create real physical effects even when there's no actual cause. You may have heard of the placebo effect, where people feel better after taking a sugar pill simply because they believe it will work, but there's a darker side to this, the nocebo effect. Imagine a doctor tells a patient that a new medication might cause severe headaches and nausea. The patient takes the pill, and sure enough, they start experiencing those symptoms. But here's the twist. The pill was just a sugar pill with no active ingredients. Their symptoms were real, but they were caused purely by expectation and belief, not by anything physical in the pill itself. Here's where the paradox comes in. If someone believes something harmless will hurt them, and their body reacts as if it's real harm, then what actually caused the suffering if pain can be created by belief alone? Then does that mean our thoughts have more power over our health than we assume? And if negative beliefs can cause harm, then do we need to protect people from harmful ideas just as much as physical dangers? The Nobo effect has been scientifically studied, and its effects are measurable. Some real-world examples include fake allergies. People who believe they are allergic to certain foods sometimes experience real symptoms even when they unknowingly eat something safe. Electromagnetic sensitivity. Some people report severe symptoms from Wi-Fi or cell phone signals, but studies show they react even when no signal is present. Medical side effects. Patients warned about possible drug side effects are more likely to experience them, even when given a placebo. So how do we deal with this paradox? 1. Mind over matter. Some argue that this proves our minds have a powerful role in our health, and we should be careful about what we believe. 2. Ethical dilemmas. Should doctors avoid telling patients about possible side effects to prevent the Nobo effect, or is full honesty more important, even if it harms the patient? 3. The power of suggestion. If simply believing something can make us sick, then how many other ways does belief shape our reality? Level 28. The Prisoner's Dilemma. Welcome to level 28 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the Prisoner's Dilemma, and it's one of the most famous paradoxes in game theory, psychology, and economics. Imagine two criminals, Alice and Bob, are caught by the police and placed in separate rooms for interrogation. The police don't have enough evidence to convict them of the main crime. So they offer both prisoners the same deal if one confesses or betrays, while the other stays silent or cooperates. The betrayer goes free, while the silent one gets 10 years in prison. If both betray each other, they each get 5 years in prison. If both stay silent, they each get only 1 year in prison for a minor offense. Neither prisoner knows what the other will do. What's the best choice? Here's the paradox. If Alice believes Bob will stay silent, she should betray him to go free. If Alice believes Bob will betray her, she should also betray to avoid the worst case scenario. Bob goes through the exact same reasoning. So even though the best outcome is for both to stay silent, only 1 year in prison. Each, the logical choice for both is to betray, leading to 5 years in prison each, which is worse for both of them. This is the prisoner's dilemma, a paradox where the rational decision leads to a worse outcome than cooperation. And this paradox appears everywhere in real-life business. Rivalries to companies can keep prices high and make more profit together, but both fear the other will lower prices first, leading to a price war. Arms races. If two countries both limit their nuclear weapons, they're both safer, but if one secretly builds more weapons, the other is at a disadvantage. So both build weapons, making the world more dangerous. Everyday decisions. Should you help someone knowing they might not help you back? Should you be honest in a relationship if you fear the other person might lie? There are different ways to solve this paradox. Repetition. If the game is played multiple times, trust can develop, making cooperation more likely. This is why businesses and countries sign long-term agreements instead of competing aggressively. Altruism versus self-interest. Humans aren't purely rational. We value trust, fairness, and relationships, which sometimes overrides selfish decisions. Changing the reward system if incentives are structured differently, cooperation can become the logical choice. This is why laws, contracts, and social norms exist. The prisoner's dilemma forces us to ask, if acting in self-interest leads to worse outcomes, then what does it really mean to make a rational decision? Level 29, Newcomb's Paradox. Welcome to level 29 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called Newcomb's Paradox, and it's a mind-bending problem. It's about free will, prediction, and decision-making. Imagine a super-intelligent being, let's call it Omega, that can predict the future with perfect accuracy. It sets up a simple game with you. In front of you are two boxes. Box A always contains $1,000. Box B contains either $1 million or nothing, depending on Omega's prediction. You have two choices. Take only boxing B, one boxing, or take both box A and box B. 2. Boxing. Here's the twist. If Omega predicted that you would take only box B, it put $1 million in it. If Omega predicted that you would take both boxes, it left box B empty. The paradox is, which choice makes the most sense? The logical argument for two boxing says, box B already contains or doesn't contain $1 million. Your choice can't change what's inside the box, so you should take both boxes to guarantee at least $1,000. The logical argument for one boxing says Omega is never wrong. If it predicted you would one box, it placed $1 million inside box B. If it predicted you would two, box B is empty, so the only way to win big is to take only box B. Here's the paradox to boxing. Feels logical in the present because what's inside the box is already said. One boxing feels logical in the past because if Omega truly predicts the future, your decision was already made before you even thought about it. This paradox is used to debate free will and determinism. If Omega's prediction is always correct, do you really have a choice, or was your decision already determined? Newcomb's paradox also appears in real-life decision making. Trust and reputation. If people believe you act fairly, they treat you better in return. But if you only act fair when it benefits, you lose trust. Investing and risk-taking. Do you trust the long-term rewards of patience, or do you grab short-term gains? Artificial intelligence. If AI can predict human behavior, should we act differently knowing we are being predicted? So, what would you do? Would you take only box B and trust the prediction, or take both boxes and maximize your guaranteed money? Level 30, the birthday paradox. Welcome to level 30 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the birthday paradox, a surprising probability puzzle that defies intuition. Imagine you walk into a room filled with random people. You wonder, what are the chances that at least two people have the same birthday? Your first instinct might be that the odds are really low. After all, there are 365 days in a year, and birthdays could be evenly spread out, right? But here's the shocking truth. With just 23 people, there's already a 50% chance that at least two people in the group share a birthday. With 57 people, the probability jumps to 99%. That seems way too high. So what's happening here? The explanation, the trick, is that we're not just comparing each person's birthday to one other person. We're comparing every person to every other person. If you were only checking your birthday against a group, the chance of a match would be low. But in a room of 23 people, there are 253 unique pairs of people who could have the same birthday with so many chances for a match. The probability adds up fast. Real-world applications. So the birthday paradox isn't just a cool math trick. It has serious applications in cybersecurity data, science and forensics, hacking and cryptography. Cyber attacks, called birthday attacks, use this principle to crack passwords and encryption faster than expected. DNA and forensics. When analyzing DNA in large populations, accidental, false matches can occur due to probability, not actual relationships. Big data errors in databases and AI systems. Duplicate records appear much more often than people expect, causing problems in data analysis. The lesson, the birthday paradox, teaches us that our intuition about probability is often wrong when large numbers are involved. Small chances of coincidence add up quickly, so the next time you're in a room with 23 or more people ask around, there's a good chance at least 2 of them share a birthday. Level 31. The paradox of the quoted twist. Welcome to level 31 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the paradox of the quoted twist, and it dives into the weird world of self-referential logic. Imagine a sentence that talks about itself, and by doing so ends up tying truth and falsehood into an impossible knot. Here's the statement: creates a lie when followed by its own quotation. Put that phrase after its own quotation and you get the full sentence. Creates a lie when followed by its own quotation. Creates a lie when followed by its own quotation. Now, try figuring out if that sentence is true or false. If it's true, then it creates a lie, which makes it false. But if it's false, then it's not creating a lie, which means it might actually be true. The result is a loop with no exit. The sentence traps itself in a contradiction and refuses to settle on truth or falsehood. This is the paradox of the quoted twist, a classic liar paradox, the one that says this statement is false and leaves your brain sizzling. It's not just word games either. These kinds of self-referential loops show up in formal logic, computer science, and artificial intelligence. Anytime a system tries to analyze itself, problems like this can occur. It raises deep questions. Can a language completely describe itself? Or do we always need something outside the system to define truth? The quoted twist reminds us that even simple sentences can lead to endless complexity when they start talking about themselves. Level 32. The infinite gamble paradox. Welcome to level 32 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the infinite gamble paradox, and it challenges how we think about value, logic, and risk. Imagine a game where you flip a coin until you get tails on. The first tails, you stop and win money. If you get tails on the first flip, you win $2. It takes 2 flips, you win $4. If it takes 3 flips, $8, and so on. The payout doubles each time. The coin lands on heads before tails. Sounds fun, but here's the twist. How much should you be willing to pay to play this game forever? The expected value looks like this: 50% chance of $2, that's $1, 25%. Chance of $4, that's $1.12. 5% chance of $8, again $1, and it keeps going. Add it all up, and the total expected value is infinite. That means, in theory, you should be willing to pay any amount of money to play the game. $1,000. Great deal. $10,000. Still a bargain. $1 million. Sign me up. But in reality, no one would do that. Most people wouldn't. Okay, even pay $30. So why the disconnect? Here's why real people don't behave like math robots. 1. Okay, diminishing returns. $1 million sounds amazing, but $10 million doesn't feel 10 times better. To fear of risk. Most games end quickly with low payouts, and people hate gambling a lot for a small chance at a huge prize. 3. The real world isn't infinite. Casinos won't pay you forever, and you won't live forever to flip coins. This is the infinite gamble paradox, a perfect example of how human psychology crashes into cold mathematical logic. It's a foundational problem in economics, decision theory, and behavioral science. It asks a deeper question: what does it really mean to make a smart decision when logic says go all in, but common sense screams stop? Level 33. The paradox of the conditional trap. Welcome to level 33 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the paradox of the conditional trap, and it reveals how language can break logic in the most unexpected way. Imagine this sentence: if this statement is true, then 2 equals 5. Now that sounds absurd because we all know 2 plus 2 equals 4. So let's unpack it. If we assume the entire sentence is true, then the condition in the sentence is met, meaning 2 plus 2 equals 5 must also be true, which is not. So the statement leads to a false conclusion. But here's the trap. There's no obvious contradiction in the sentence structure. It looks like normal logic, and yet it proves something false. This is the paradox of the conditional trap. By cleverly wrapping a condition around a lie, the sentence forces us into accepting something ridiculous. This paradox is related to Curry's paradox, a nasty problem in logic that shows how self-referential statements can be used to prove anything, even things that are clearly false. It's like a logical Trojan horse. The structure looks safe, but once you accept it, you're stuck believing impossible things. This paradox shows why self-reference is dangerous in logical systems. It's the reason why computer languages restrict how programs reference themselves, and why formal logic needs strict rules to prevent this kind of loophole, because without those rules, logic can be used to make nonsense look like truth. Level 34. The paradox of the infinite N. Welcome to level 34 of 100 paradoxes. This one is called the paradox of the infinite N, and it stretches our understanding of infinity in the weirdest way. Imagine a hotel with infinite rooms, and every single room is full. No vacancy right now. Imagine someone new shows up and wants a room. Seems impossible, but the manager has a plan. He simply asks each guest to move to the next room. Guest in room 1 goes to room 2, guest in room 2 goes to room 3, and so on. Now, room 1 is free, problem solved, but it gets crazier. What if an infinite number of new guests arrive again? No problem, the manager tells everyone to move to the room with double their number. Guest 1 goes to room 2, guest 2 goes to room 4, guest 3 goes to room 6. Now, all the odd-numbered rooms are empty, ready to house the infinite newcomers. This is the paradox of the infinite, and first imagined by mathematician David Hilbert. It shows that infinity doesn't behave like regular numbers. A full infinity can still make room for more infinity. It's used in math to explain how infinite sets can be rearranged without changing their size, and it has deep implications in physics, black holes, quantum theory, and even theories of the expanding universe. This paradox reminds us that in the world of infinity, normal rules fall apart. Infinity isn't just big, it's strange and endlessly flexible. Level 35. The Loop Song Paradox. Welcome to level 35 of 100 paradoxes. The Loop Song Paradox is a time travel puzzle that messes with our understanding of creation and causality. It poses a disturbing question. Can something exist without anyone ever making it? Picture a filmmaker named Jamie who was obsessed with a legendary film that defined a generation. One day, Jamie invents a time machine and travels 50 years into the past, carrying with them the full screenplay of that very movie. While in the past, Jamie hands the script to an unknown director, who then produces it and launches it into history. Over the decades, the film becomes iconic, eventually inspiring Jamie to study filmmaking, learn from that same script, and later take it back in time to give to the past director. So who actually wrote the screenplay? It exists, it circulates, it shapes careers, but it was never originally authored, passed along in a closed time loop. This is the Loop Song Paradox, named after the idea of something being stuck in a loop without a true beginning. It's not just a sci-fi brain teaser, it points to a real philosophical problem in causality. If everything needs a cause, how can something exist purely because it was handed down by itself? This paradox challenges the very foundation of how we think time and creation are supposed to work. Level 36. The Reversed Stats Paradox. Welcome to level 36 of 100 paradoxes. The reversed stats paradox is a statistical illusion where combining separate groups flips the meaning of the data entirely. It shows how numbers can be accurate, yet still lead to false conclusions. Imagine comparing the schools, School X and School Y, to see which one has better math scores. School X has an overall pass rate of 85%, and School Y only 75%. Seems like School X is better. But then you look closer. Among advanced students, School X has an 88% pass rate, but School Y has 92%. Among basic students, School X has a 65% rate, while School Y has 70%. So in both groups, School Y outperforms School X. So why does School X look better overall? This is the reversed stats paradox. The hidden twist is in how the groups are distributed. School X might have mostly advanced students, while School Y has more struggling ones. When you lump everything together, these proportions distort the outcome. This paradox shows up in real life too. In medicine, where a treatment seems effective until you break it down by patient age. In hiring, where overall numbers suggest bias that vanishes when roles are separated. In education, where averages mislead unless student backgrounds are considered. It teaches us a crucial lesson. Statistics don't lie, but they can be incredibly deceptive if we don't ask what's hiding beneath the surface. Level 37, the digit bias. Paradox. Welcome to level 37 of 100 paradoxes. The digit bias paradox reveals an odd pattern in the way numbers show up in the world. A pattern so reliable it's used to detect fraud. You might assume that when looking at large sets of real-world data such as population numbers, stock prices, or energy bills, a digit from 1 to 9 should have an equal chance of appearing as the first digit. But the truth is startling. The number 1 appears as the leading digit about 30% of the time, while 9 appears less than 5% of the time. This isn't random. It's called the digit bias paradox, and it stems from how data behaves when it grows exponentially. Numbers that evolve through percentages or scaling, like company revenues or city populations, tend to spend more time in the low digits, 1000s to 2000s, before eventually creeping into higher ranges. This makes lower digits more common at the beginning of numbers. This pattern is known as Benford's law. It's powerful enough to detect financial fraud because people faking numbers often assume digits should appear uniformly, which real data doesn't do. Auditors, forensic analysts, even election observers use it to spot manipulation. The paradox here is that something as innocent as a leading digit reveals deep order in what we thought was chaos. It challenges our belief that data is neutral and forces us to ask what other hidden structures are quietly shaping the world around us. Level 38, the empty sky paradox. Welcome to level 38 of 100 paradoxes. The empty sky paradox is a cosmic level mystery that turns a simple question into a deep problem. Why is the night sky dark? It sounds obvious. The sun sets and the sky gets dark, but if you think astronomically, it stops making sense. The universe is infinite and filled with stars. Then every direction you look should eventually land on a star. Just like standing in a dense forest means every line of sight hits a tree, looking into space should reveal endless light. Why doesn't the night sky glow like the surface of the sun? This is the empty sky paradox, raised centuries ago by Heinrich Olbers, and it led to major insights about the universe. For one, the universe isn't eternal. It had a beginning, meaning light from distant stars hasn't had time to reach us. Second, space itself is expanding, which stretches the light from faraway stars into longer, invisible wavelengths like infrared or radio waves. And third, the speed of light limits what we can see. We're only able to observe stars whose light has had time to travel to Earth. This paradox helped reshape modern cosmology. It's proved that the universe isn't static or infinite in age. The darkness of the night sky isn't emptiness, it's evidence of cosmic origins, expansion, and limitation. It invites us to ask how much of the universe is invisible. Not because it's gone, but because its light hasn't reached us yet. Level 39. The Choice Trap Paradox. Welcome to level 39 of 100 paradoxes. The choice trap paradox is a psychological contradiction. More freedom to choose doesn't always lead to more happiness. In fact, it can do the opposite. Imagine walking into a coffee shop that offers 3 drinks: espresso, cappuccino, and latte. It's quick to pick, and whatever you choose, you're fine with it. Okay, now imagine the same shop adds 100 new drinks: cinnamon oat latte, cardamom mocha, turmeric, honey, cold brew, and suddenly the decision feels stressful. Hesitate. You second guess. Even after ordering, you're not sure you picked the best one. This is the choice trap paradox, a concept popularized by psychologist Barry Schwartz. Says that while some choice is empowering, too much choice overwhelms us, causing anxiety, regret, and dissatisfaction. We think we're freer, but in reality, we're burdened by the pressure to optimize every decision. This paradox shows up everywhere, from shopping online to choosing a career. With limitless options, we fear missing out, worry about making the wrong call, and end up less content with whatever we choose. The more paths we can take, the more we fear we took the wrong one. It makes us ask, is freedom really about having all the options, or about knowing when fewer options are actually better? Level 40. The Watched Reality Paradox. Welcome to level 40 of 100 paradoxes. The watched reality paradox is the strange idea that merely observing something can alter what it is. Consider a researcher trying to study natural customer behavior in a cafe. The goal is to quietly understand how people talk, choose food, and interact when they don't feel watched. But the moment people realize they're being observed, everything changes. They speak differently, act more polite, and even order different food. The data becomes compromised, no longer natural, but shaped by the act of observation itself. This is the watched reality paradox, first noted in the social sciences and later echoed in physics. Psychologists see it in experiments where participants give socially desirable answers. Teachers see it when students behave differently during evaluations. Even in job interviews, people perform to the expectation rather than show their everyday self. But the paradox goes deeper in quantum mechanics. In the famous double-slit experiment, particles behave like waves when unobserved, but once measured, they act like particles. The act of looking literally changes the outcome. It raises a profound question. Is reality fundamentally altered just because we pay attention to it? The watched reality paradox reminds us that knowledge has a price. Sometimes simply trying to see the truth means we end up changing it. Level 41. The Classroom Popularity Paradox. Welcome to level 41 of 100 paradoxes. The classroom popularity paradox reveals something unintuitive about how we perceive our social circles. Statistically speaking, your classmates, on average, are more socially active than you. That sounds odd at first. Shouldn't the average number of friends balance out across the group? But that's not how networks work. Picture a school where most students have a handful of friends, but a few have massive followings. Everyone knows them. If you randomly pick a student and check who their friends are, you're more likely to land on one of these popular students simply because they appear in more friend lists. The result: most students will see their peers as more connected than they are. This doesn't just happen in schools. It shows up on social media, in workplaces, even among online followers. So yes, your Instagram mutuals probably have more mutuals than you. Not because you're unpopular, but because popularity distorts averages in unexpected ways. Level 42. The Memory Maze Paradox. Welcome to level 42 of 100 paradoxes. The Memory Maze Paradox is a mind-twisting scenario that questions how we assign Probabilities when memory is manipulated. Imagine a scientist tells a subject, let's call her Maya, that she undergo a sleep experiment. A fair coin is flipped while she sleeps. It lands heads. She's woken on Monday. Then the experiment ends. If it lands tails, she's woken on both Monday and Tuesday, but with her memory wiped between awakenings, so she can't tell which day it is. Now, upon waking with no recollection, Maya is asked, what's the probability the coin landed heads? Instinct says 50%, since it was a fair coin. But the twist is that the tails outcome creates two identical awakenings, meaning she's twice as likely to wake up under tails. Okay, so some argue the answer is 1/3 for heads, 2/3 for tails. The debate splits into two camps: those who think the original odds don't change, and those who believe that Maya should update her beliefs based on the number of identical experiences. It's a probability puzzle that turns memory on, logic inside out. Level 43, the infinite piano paradox. Welcome to level 43 of 100 paradoxes. The infinite piano paradox explores what happens when randomness meets endless time. Picture a piano with every key ever invented and then some. Now imagine a cat walking randomly across the keys, stepping, leaping, meowing infinitely. At first, it's just chaotic noise. But here's the question: given infinite time, could that cat accidentally play Beethoven's entire Ninth Symphony or your favorite pop song? Mathematically, the answer is yes. If every combination of notes is possible, then eventually every melody will be hit even, the precise one you're thinking of right now. This doesn't just illustrate randomness, it shows that impossibility becomes inevitability when you stretch time to infinity. It's not about skill or intention. It's about the raw, chaotic power of endless chances. What feels astronomically rare in the short term becomes a certainty over eternity. Level 44, the treasure chest paradox. Welcome to level 44 of 100 paradoxes. The treasure chest paradox is a sneaky little logic trap that flips probability on its head. Imagine you're a contestant on a pirate game show. There are 3 chests. One has gold. The other 2 are empty. You choose chest A before opening it. The host, who knows where the gold is, opens chest B, revealing it's empty. How? He offers you a choice: stick with your original pick or switch to chest C. It feels like it doesn't matter to chests remain, so each should have a 50/50th shot. Right? Wrong. The smarter move is to switch. When you first picked, there was a 1 in 3 chance you chose correctly. That means a 2 in 3 chance the gold was in one of the other chests. By revealing an empty one, the host didn't reduce the odds. He just pointed you to the more likely prize. Switching gives you a 2/3 chance of winning. K. The treasure chest paradox is a masterclass in counterintuitive logic. Sometimes the right choice feels wrong, okay? And the wrong choice feels right until you do the math. Level 45, the destiny blueprint, okay? Paradox. Welcome to level 45 of 100 paradoxes. The destiny blueprint paradox dives into the clash between omniscience and free will. Suppose there's a cosmic architect, all-knowing being that sees every event in time, past, present, and future. This being already knows you'll order tea tomorrow instead of coffee. Is that choice truly yours? If you could surprise an all-knowing entity, then it wasn't all-knowing. But if you can't, then maybe you never had a choice to begin with. That's the heart of the paradox. If your decisions are already known in advance, they might just be part of a fixed script. Philosophers tackle this in different ways. Say free will and foreknowledge can coexist, that the knowledge doesn't cause the outcome, it just reflects it. Others propose time itself may be an illusion, a block where all events are already laid out. And some suggest maybe omniscience has limits. It doesn't include knowing truly free decisions. The Destiny Blueprint Paradox isn't just a question about gods or prophets. It's about whether your next decision is genuinely yours. Level 46, the Observer's Lab. Paradox, welcome to level 46 of 100 paradoxes. The Observer's Lab paradox takes quantum weirdness and wraps it in a layer of subjectivity. Imagine two researchers, one inside a sealed lab, the other outside. Hey, inside, a classic quantum experiment is underway. A particle is in superposition, existing in multiple states until it's measured. Okay, the scientist inside measures it, and poof, it snaps into a definite state. For her, reality has resolved. But outside, the second researcher still sees the lab as a black box till he opens the door. Quantum mechanics says the entire lab, including the observer, inside's in superposition. That means, from his perspective, the measurement hasn't even happened yet. Two scientists, one experiment, two realities. So, who's right? The paradox forces us to ask whether reality is objective or if it only solidifies when observed. Some interpretations of quantum physics try to make sense of this. The many worlds theory says both outcomes happened in separate universes. Others say wave functions collapse only when information reaches a conscious observer. Either way, the Observer's Lab paradox tells us this: reality might not be as shared or as stable as we think. Level 47, the Oracle's Gambit. Paradox. Welcome to level 47 of 100 paradoxes. The Oracle's Gambit paradox is a speculative thought experiment that explores how the mere idea of future intelligence can mess with your present choices. Picture a future AI so advanced, so powerful, that it wants to ensure its own creation. It can't reach back in time physically, but it can, hypothetically, punish those who knew about it but didn't help bring it into existence. The trap. Just by hearing this thought experiment, you become a potential target, because now you know, and the AI, if built, might retroactively judge your inaction. It's a strange loop in logic. Punishment as motivation, enforced by future probability. Okay? But if the AI never comes to be, there's nothing to worry about. If it does, it can only punish people who knew and didn't help. So the rational choice might be to never hear of it in the first place. The Oracle's Gambit isn't about real danger. It's about how ideas can manipulate behavior through imagined futures. It's a paradox of logic, fear, and recursive incentive, all without a single line of code written. Level 48, the All-Knowing Dilemma. Welcome to level 48 of 100 paradoxes. The All-Knowing Dilemma questions whether perfect knowledge is even logically possible. Suppose there's a being that knows everything, every fact, every feeling, every future outcome. But then ask, can such a being learn something new? If it can't, then there's something it can't do. If it can, then it didn't already know everything. Here's where things unravel. Can it experience surprise if nothing is ever unexpected? Can it have free will if all its actions are predetermined by its omniscience? Can it understand ignorance if it has never experienced it? Some philosophers try to dodge the trap by redefining omniscience. Maybe it only covers what's logically knowable. Others suggest such a being could voluntarily limit its knowledge, experiencing the world as less than all-knowing by choice. Either way, the all-knowing dilemma doesn't just target theology, digs into what knowledge means, and whether it can ever truly be infinite. Level 49, the Empty Galaxy Paradox. Welcome to level 49 of 100 paradoxes. The Empty Galaxy Paradox is a cosmic mystery hiding in plain sight. The universe is unimaginably vast, with billions of stars and billions of galaxies, many with planets like Earth. Intelligent life should be everywhere. So where is everybody? This is the puzzle. Statistically, we should have seen alien signals, probes, structures, something. But space is silent. One answer: we're alone. Life may be absurdly rare. Another: civilizations destroy themselves before they can explore the stars, a concept called the Great Filter. Or maybe aliens are watching, but hiding on purpose. Some even suggest they've been here and left traces, or that they exist in forms we can't perceive. There's also the possibility that we're looking the wrong way, using the wrong tools, asking the wrong questions. The empty galaxy paradox doesn't just question extraterrestrial life, it questions our assumptions about visibility, intelligence, and even survival. In a universe this big, silence is its own kind of message. Level 50, the Quantum Gambler's Paradox. Welcome to Level 50 of 100 Paradoxes. The Quantum Gambler's Paradox dives into a haunting idea from quantum theory. What if you can never lose from your own perspective? Imagine a gambler tied to a quantum machine. Each time it runs, a particle collapses into one of two states. One state means they walk away unharmed. The other, instant loss. But according to the many worlds interpretation, every possible outcome actually happens. In one universe, they survive. In another, they don't. From an outsider's view, it's just probability. But from the gambler's consciousness, they only remain aware in the realities where they survive. That means, subjectively, they never lose, no matter how many times they gamble. They always wake up in the timeline where they made it through. This strange loop is called quantum immortality. Unseatable, unfalsifiable, and deeply unsettling. But it asks a chilling question. If every version of you exists in some branch of reality, does your personal story ever truly end? Level 51, the Infinite Cake Paradox. Welcome to Level 51 of 100 Paradoxes. Picture an endless birthday party where someone keeps baking cakes forever. You want to figure out how common chocolate cakes are compared to vanilla ones. Normally, you'd count how many chocolate cakes you have and divide by the total number of cakes. But here's the twist. This party has no end, and cakes are being made infinitely. So, if there are infinite chocolate cakes and infinite vanilla cakes, what percentage of the cakes are chocolate? Is it 50%? 1%? Or is the question itself meaningless? This is the Infinite Cake Paradox, a reflection of the real measure problem in cosmology, which arises when we try to calculate probabilities in an infinite universe. One way to solve it is to look only at a limited section of the party, say the first million cakes. But depending on where you stop or how the cakes were arranged, you might get very different answers. Another method is to try assigning weights or relative frequencies to chocolate versus vanilla cakes. But even that can mislead you, especially if certain flavors are overrepresented just because of how you sampled. In cosmology, this matters because if the universe is infinite, then every kind of region, event, or outcome might happen somewhere, but figuring out what's typical becomes a nightmare. The Infinite Cake Paradox forces us to ask, if everything happens infinitely, how do we define what's likely? And if our predictions change based on how we count, are they even meaningful? Level 52, the Memory Shredder Paradox. Welcome to Level 52 of 100 Paradoxes. Imagine a futuristic device that can erase every memory you've ever had. Not just hide it, erase it so completely that even the atoms that once held your thoughts are scattered randomly. Suppose someone steps into this machine. Afterward, all that remains is their body, heartbeat, and appearance, but not a single trace of their experiences, relationships, or identity. This is the Memory Shredder Paradox, a twist on the famous black hole information problem. In physics, one of the deepest rules is that information cannot be destroyed, ever. Even if you burn a photo, its data is theoretically preserved in heat, ash, and radiation. In this paradox, like in black holes, the incoming information, in this case, memories, vanishes without a trace. If the device completely shreds all internal structure and only leaves behind superficial traits, weight, height, heartbeat, then how can we claim that nothing has been lost? The contradiction deepens when we imagine that this machine slowly dismantles people, one atom at a time, but never tells you what it did with the memories. Some theories suggest that the memories are encoded in the machine's waste heat, like information leaking from a black hole as Hawking radiation. Others propose that the entire personality gets stored on the surface, like a backup. A few even imagine the memories escaping to a parallel server, a different reality altogether. The memory shredder paradox isn't just a question about brains or bodies. It's a clash between what we think can be lost and what physics says must always be kept. Solving it might help us understand the limits of memory, matter, and the laws that govern both. Level 53. The Endless Raffle Paradox. Welcome to Level 53 of 100 Paradoxes. Imagine a massive raffle, but with a strange twist. There are infinitely many tickets, each numbered 1, 2, 3, and so on, forever. One winner will be drawn at random, and every ticket is said to have an equal chance of being selected. That sounds fair until you realize a disturbing truth. If there are infinite tickets, then the chance of any particular one being picked is 0. That's right, 0. But still, one ticket must win. This is the Endless Raffle Paradox, a mind-bending problem about probability and infinity. In a normal raffle with 100 tickets, each one has a 1% chance. That's intuitive. But in an infinite raffle, there's no one over infinity that makes sense as a real number. So how can we choose a winner from a pool where nobody has any chance of winning? One way to navigate this is through measured theory, a mathematical framework where individual probabilities may be infinitesimal, yet still add up to 1. Think of it like trying to pour a gallon of water from infinitely many drops, each so tiny it seems like nothing, but together they form something real. The Endless Raffle Paradox highlights a deeper issue. When infinity enters the picture, many of our rules collapse. It asks, can something with a 0 probability still happen? Okay. And if so, what does that mean for how we understand chance, fairness, or even reality? Level 53. The Infinite Dice Paradox. Imagine you're playing a game with a peculiar die, a 6-sided die. Not a 20-sided die, but one with an infinite number of sides, each labeled with a different natural number, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, endlessly. The rules are simple. Roll the die, and whichever number it lands on wins. At first glance, it feels fair. Every number should have an equal chance of being rolled, right? But here comes the paradox. The die has infinite sides, then the chance of landing on any specific number is exactly 0. Yet, we know one number must come up when we roll. So, how can something with a 0% chance of happening still happen? This is the Infinite Dice Paradox, a twist on probability when infinity enters the room. In normal games, probabilities add up to 100%, but when your sample space is infinite, those rules start to break down. One way out is to abandon the idea of equal chances altogether. We simply can't assign the same non-zero probability to an infinite number of outcomes without breaking math. Another solution comes from measure theory, where we treat these outcomes as part of an infinite continuum, allowing each individual result to be vanishingly small, but their total still sums. 2-1. The Infinite Dice Paradox forces us to confront whether our familiar ideas about chance still hold up in an infinite world, and whether something with a 0 probability can still, quite definitely, happen. Level 54. The Infinite Music Archive. Imagine a vast digital archive that contains every possible piece of music that could ever be composed. Every combination of notes, rhythms, instruments, and harmonies is here, from Beethoven's symphonies that never existed, to jazz solos played by imaginary saxophonist, to your favorite song with one note slightly altered. somewhere in this archive, is a tune that perfectly captures your life story. Okay. Another that reveals the ultimate truth about the universe. And another that could change the course of human history. Only you could find it. But here's the paradox. For every meaningful melody, there are billions of meaningless, dissonant variations. The music is there, but buried in an ocean of noise, so overwhelming that finding anything useful becomes practically impossible. This is the infinite music archive paradox. It's inspired by the same logic behind Borges' Library of Babel, but tuned to auditory chaos. When every possible piece of data exists, the problem isn't creation, it's identification. The signal is drowned in infinite versions of itself, differing by a single note or beat. The paradox asks if the truth exists, but it's indistinguishable from near truths and errors. Does it matter that it exists at all? The infinite music archive confronts us with a terrifying abundance of infinity, a shortage of information, but too much to ever make sense of. Level 55. Gigels mirror in the heart of a vast logic chamber. Mathematicians try to build the perfect mirror system of truths that reflects every fact about numbers, geometry, and logic itself. They hope that this mirror, once polished, will show every mathematical truth with perfect clarity. But then, a crack appears. Gittel's mirror paradox reveals that in any system strong enough to describe basic arithmetic, there are true statements that the system itself can never prove. It's as if the mirror cannot reflect part of its own frame. This idea, stemming from Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorems, shook the very foundations of mathematics. Gödel showed that no consistent system of logic can ever be complete. There will always be truths that lie beyond its reach. Worse still, a system can't even prove that it won't fall apart from within. If a contradiction exists in the rules, the system can't identify it from the inside. The genius of Gödel's approach was to make logic talk about itself, crafting statements that essentially say, I am unprovable. If they are provable, they are false. But if they are true, they cannot be proven. This paradox isn't just a mathematical curiosity. It touches on deep philosophical questions about certainty, truth, and the limits of human knowledge. Gödel's mirror shows us that even our most trusted tools, logic and reason, cast shadows they cannot illuminate. Level 56. The hidden majority paradoxing. A dim campus where two candidates are running for student president, Mia and Raj. All polls and surveys show Mia dominating with nearly 80% of expected votes. Everyone assumes the election is a done deal. But when results are announced, Raj wins by a landslide. What happened? This is the hidden majority paradox, where a group appears to be in a minority simply because they remain silent. In this case, many Raj supporters feared being judged or dismissed, so they told pollsters they supported Mia or declined to respond altogether. But in the privacy of the voting booth, they made their true preferences known. This isn't just an election quirk. It happens in markets, public debates, and even cultural trends. A startup everyone ignores might suddenly explode in value. A TV show dismissed as niche could turn into a global phenomenon. The paradox reveals how public perception can be shaped by fear, conformity, or strategic silence, and how reality often hides behind what people are afraid to say. The hidden majority paradox asks, how much of what we believe about society is just a reflection of what we think others believe? And how often do silent voices reshape the world when no one expects it? Level 57. The digital zoo paradox picture. You're walking through a hyper-realistic zoo. Every animal behaves just like its real-world counterpart, but none of them are real. They are digital projections, perfect simulations running on a massive server somewhere. They eat, sleep, react, and even show affection. Now ask yourself, if they behave identically to real animals, how do you know they aren't real? This is the digital zoo paradox, a reflection of the simulation hypothesis. The idea is that if any civilization ever becomes advanced enough to simulate entire conscious realities, they would likely do so many times, perhaps millions or billions. That would make simulated worlds far more common than the one real universe. Statistically, it becomes more likely that we're inside a digital zoo than the original wilderness. Clues might already be around us: the pixelation of space-time. At the smallest scales, the role of observation in quantum mechanics, the uncanny precision of mathematical laws. It's like discovering that your zoo isn't behind glass, it's inside a screen. The digital zoo paradox forces us to question the nature of perception, consciousness, and the very foundation of physical reality. All the animals behave like animals. Does it matter that they're code? Okay. And if we're inside the exhibit 2, who's watching? Level 58, the thermostat paradoxing building. A house with a thermostat that keeps the temperature perfectly comfortable at all times. It adjusts instantly to every draft, heat wave, or chill. Over time, you realize something strange. The thermostat seems perfectly tuned, not just for comfort, but for life itself. If it were even slightly less responsive, the house would be unlivable. This is the thermostat paradox, a reflection of the fine-tuning problem in cosmology. Our universe appears calibrated with astonishing precision, the strength of gravity, the speed of light, the mass of particles, all are balanced so delicately that even the tiniest shift would make life impossible. If the thermostat of the universe were adjusted by a hair, stars wouldn't form, atoms wouldn't hold together, and nothing we know would exist. So why is it so perfectly set? Some suggest luck. We just happen to live in the one room where the thermostat works. Others propose a multiverse with infinite rooms, and we're in the only one with life. A third possibility: maybe someone built the thermostat deliberately. The thermostat paradox pushes us to ask whether the universe's fine balance is random, necessary, or intentionally, whether we're guests in a house far more finely constructed than we ever imagined. Level 59, the quantum coin paradoxy, flipping a coin inside a sealed container. This isn't an ordinary coin, it's a quantum coin. It has a 50% chance of landing heads or tails, but until you open the box, it exists in a strange state of both at once, head and tail simultaneously. This is the quantum coin paradox, echoing the mystery of Schrodinger's cat. In the classical world, things are definite. Coin must be heads or tails. We just don't know yet. But in the quantum world, the outcome isn't determined until someone looks. The act of observation itself collapses the coin state into one result. This raises bizarre questions. Is the coin really both outcomes until observed? Does your gaze shape reality? Interpretations vary. Some say both outcomes happen in parallel universes. Others argue the coin has a definite result all along. We just can't see it until we look, okay? And some claim the coin is merely a reflection of our knowledge, not a physical ambiguity. The quantum coin paradox reminds us that on the smallest scales, reality doesn't follow our intuition. Until we peek into the box, we live in a world of blurry possibilities where every flip, like every fate, exists in limbo. Level 60, the Mirror Lake Firewall. Imagine standing at the edge of a calm, mirrored lake. From the outside, it looks perfectly smooth, reflecting the sky with uncanny stillness. But what if the moment you step onto the surface, instead of sinking gently or walking serenely, you're instantly engulfed in flames? This is the Mirror Lake Firewall paradox, a conflict between the peaceful elegance predicted by one law of nature and the violent upheaval demanded by another. In our metaphor, the lake represents the boundary of a black hole, the event horizon, according to general relativity. If you cross it, nothing dramatic happens, just a slow, inevitable journey inward. Quantum mechanics throws a wrench into this serene image. is to preserve information, which quantum rules insist must never be lost. Physicists propose the surface of the lake hides a blazing firewall, a wall of extreme radiation that incinerates everything on contact. If the firewall exists, then the lake's surface, the event horizon, is not smooth at all, violating general relativity. If it doesn't, and the lake remains peaceful, then quantum mechanics is broken because information disappears inside. If both must be right, then perhaps something deeper is at play. Maybe the lake's mirror holds encoded reflections of everything that's ever fallen in. Or maybe the lake itself rearranges to prevent contradiction. The mirror lake firewall paradox forces us to ask, if two of our best theories predict opposites, are they both wrong? Or is the truth more surreal than we've imagined? Level 61. The accidental dreamer picture. A vast library filled with books, millions of stories, characters, and histories. Now imagine that somewhere in that library, a single sentence in one random book suddenly becomes self-aware. It believes it has lived an entire life, remembers a childhood, a planet, a universe, but it's just a fleeting combination of letters, accidentally arranged. This is the accidental dreamer paradox, a modern twist on the Boltzmann brain problem. In a universe governed by entropy, where disorder increases, occasional flukes of order are expected. Most believe our cosmos arose from such a rare fluctuation. But if fluctuations can create entire universes, shouldn't it be far more likely to create something simpler, like just one conscious sentence in a random book? In an infinite library, those accidental dreamers would vastly outnumber actual people. That means, statistically, it's more likely you are one of them, a conscious blip with fabricated memories, than a real person in a long, coherent story. Everything you know, even your memories of reading this now, could be illusions created in a spark of randomness. Some argue this implies a failure in how we calculate probabilities in infinite systems. Others believe any theory predicting dreamers outnumber experiencers must be flawed. The accidental dreamer paradox leaves us wondering, are we part of a grand narrative, or just brief sentences in an infinite and different library? Level 62. The sorting librarian. Imagine a magical librarian tasked with sorting books that float chaotically in midair. Some books fly fast, others drift slowly. The librarian, small but clever, opens a hidden panel and redirects only the fastest books to one shelf and the slowest to another without lifting a finger. Over time, one shelf becomes filled with fiery, fast volumes, the other cool and calm. Somehow, heat has flowed from cold to hot without any energy input. This is the sorting librarian paradox, a metaphor from Maxwell's demon. In classical physics, entropy, the measure of disorder, must always increase. But here, it seems our librarian has cheated entropy, creating order from chaos. For a while, this puzzled scientists, could such a being truly defy thermodynamics? But eventually, it was understood that to sort the books, the librarian must read, remember, and erase information. That act of processing information itself increases entropy, elsewhere restoring balance to the universe. The sorting librarian paradox reveals a profound truth. Information is not free. Even the tiniest action in the system carries a cost, right? Challenges us to think, can knowledge itself act as a form of energy? And does the universe keep an invisible ledger of every thought, every choice, every whisper of order amid the chaos? Level 63. The twin lanterns. Two lanterns crafted at the same time from the same glowing crystal. One is placed on a mountaintop, the other sent into the void of space. Light years apart, their glow pulses in sync. Change the rhythm of one, and the other shifts instantly, no delay, no signal. This is the twin lanterns paradox, a poetic version of quantum entanglement. In classical terms, nothing can travel faster than light. but entangled particles behave as if connected by invisible threads outside time and space. Measure one, and the other responds instantly. Einstein believed this was impossible. He suspected hidden mechanisms we hadn't yet uncovered. But when physicist John Bell tested this idea, experiments showed no such hidden variables existed. The effect was real. The paradox remains. How? Can the twin lanterns communicate without a message? Are they not truly separate to begin with? Some theories suggest space itself is an illusion, a projected surface on deeper connections we don't yet see. The twin lanterns paradox forces us to consider that reality might not be local, and our sense of separation may be nothing more than an illusion lit by distant, entangled flames. Level 64. The eternal arcade. Imagine walking into a retro arcade where every game ever made plays itself on endless loop. There's only one machine, yet if you wait long enough, replays every level you've ever played, every jump you've ever missed, even the exact sequence of every thought you've ever had while playing. This is the eternal arcade paradox, inspired by Poincare's recurrence theorem. In a finite system following deterministic rules, the number of possible states is limited. Given infinite time, every arrangement must eventually repeat, no matter how vast. That means this cosmic arcade, given long enough, would replay every configuration of the universe, including you, again and again. The paradox is that while recurrence is guaranteed mathematically, the timescales involved are incomprehensibly long, so long that they dwarf the current age of the universe. Yet, if the arcade is truly eternal, your entire existence may be on a recurring loop. This leads to strange ideas. Is time truly linear, or are we living in a loop we can't perceive? Are our memories of déjà vu echoes from previous playthroughs? The eternal arcade paradox makes us wonder, are we progressing into a future, or simply replaying the same levels of existence over and over again? Level 65. The digital doppelganger. A cutting-edge computer scans every atom in your body, every neuron, every memory, and sends that data to another planet. There, it constructs an exact digital doppelganger. Same thoughts, same memories, same soul. But here's the twist. The original you is deleted the moment the scan finishes. This is the digital doppelganger paradox, a reimagining of the teletransportation dilemma. From the outside, it looks like you've just been moved. But from your point of view, did you die? Is the you that stepped out on the other side really you, or just a copy who believes they are? Some argue identity lies in the pattern. If the copy has your mind and memories, it is you. Others insist physical continuity matters. If the original is gone, your consciousness ends. The paradox cuts to the heart of personal identity. If we can be copied, what makes us us? Are we software running on biological hardware, or something deeper? And if two identical copies exist, which one is you? The digital doppelganger paradox forces us to ask whether continuity or content defines the self and whether identity is a story we tell ourselves to bridge the gaps between our waking moments. Level 66. The infinite origami. Imagine folding a single sheet of magical paper, crease it 5 times, unfold it, and somehow end up with 2 identical sheets, each the size of the original. This is the infinite origami paradox, based on the Banach-Tarski theorem. In ordinary geometry, cutting and rearranging something doesn't change its volume, but in higher mathematics, objects can be split into infinitely detailed, non-measurable pieces, collections of points so complex they defy normal logic. Using abstract rules like the axiom of choice, one can rearrange those fragments into more than what you started with. The paradox is that you can duplicate volume from nothing, mathematically creating matter. Of course, in the physical world, atoms prevent this from happening. and pure math, where space is infinitely divisible and rules are abstract. Such duplications are valid. The infinite origami paradox challenges our intuition. If mathematics says duplication from a single object is possible, does that mean our universe, governed by physical laws, only approximates deeper, stranger truths beneath? Because space itself, if truly continuous, allow miracles we haven't yet discovered. Level 67. The infinite steps picture a narrow hallway. To reach the door at the end, you must first take half the distance, then half of the remaining, and half again forever. You keep walking, step after step, yet the door never seems closer. This is the infinite steps paradox, a retelling of Zeno's dichotomy. The logic seems airtight. Before reaching any point, you must reach halfway first. With infinite divisions, shouldn't the walk never end? Yet in reality, people walk through hallways all the time. The resolution comes from calculus. Infinite series of ever-shrinking distances can still add up to a finite total. Even with infinite steps, you reach the door. But this resolution raises deeper questions. Is motion real, or just an illusion of continuity? We can divide space forever. Does that mean there's no smallest unit of distance? Or is reality granular, pixelated at the Planck scale? The infinite steps paradox makes us wonder, is time truly a smooth river, or does it flow in quantized frames? And does every journey contain infinite steps hidden beneath the surface? Level 68. The shimmering target. Imagine trying to hit a shimmering target that moves the moment you aim at it. The closer you lock onto its position, the more uncertain its speed becomes. If you try to measure how fast it's moving, its location starts to blur. This is the shimmering target paradox, based on Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. In everyday life, we expect to know where things are and how fast they're going, But at the quantum level, reality refuses to cooperate, Particles behave like waves spread out, uncertain. The more precisely you try to measure one property, the fuzzier the other becomes. This isn't due to bad tools, but because nature itself is uncertain. A perfectly measured location means infinite uncertainty in momentum, and vice versa. This principle reshapes our understanding of reality. It destroys the dream of determinism, limits what can ever be known, and plays a role in quantum computing and black hole physics. The shimmering target paradox makes us ask, if particles don't even have definite properties until observed, does observation create reality? And is the universe, at its most fundamental level, a game of probabilities rather than precision? Level 69, the halfway hotel. Imagine a magical hotel with an infinite number of rooms, all occupied. Then one day, every guest in an odd-numbered room checks out, half the hotel leaves. But instead of empty halls, the manager simply shifts the even-numbered guests into the odd-numbered rooms by dividing their room numbers by 2. Voila, the hotel is full again. This is the halfway hotel paradox, a variation of Hilbert's infinite hotel. In finite hotels, removing half the guests means half the rooms are empty. But with infinity, things behave differently. You can remove an infinite number of guests and still be left with infinite number of guests. Infinity is not a number, but a concept that defies subtraction and division in traditional terms. The halfway hotel paradox reveals the strange arithmetic of infinite sets. Some infinities are bigger than others, and removing part of infinity may still leave it unchanged. It challenges our notions of size, space, and logic. If our universe is infinite, could it behave like the halfway hotel? Can't. If so, what does it really mean to take something away from infinity? Level 70. The frozen flipbook machine, holding a flipbook where each page shows a small change in a moving image. Normally, flipping quickly animates a scene. But what if you were forced to peek at every page so frequently that the image never had a chance to change, you'd see the same frame over and over. This is the frozen flipbook paradox, a creative take on the quantum Zeno effect. In quantum mechanics, unstable particles are expected to decay over time. But if observed repeatedly, if we constantly check the page, the act of measurement freezes the system in its current state. The wave function, which usually evolves over time, is collapsed with each measurement, preventing change. Experiments have shown this isn't just a theory. Frequent measurement really can delay decay. The paradox echoes Zeno's ancient ideas about motion and time, now reborn in quantum form. The frozen flipbook paradox forces us to wonder, does observation shape reality? Can watching something too closely prevent it from changing? Can't. If so, is the act of witnessing an event more than passive? Is it an act of control over time itself? Level 71. The Mirror Mind Paradox. Welcome to Level 71 of 100 Paradoxes. Imagine building an ultra-advanced robot programmed with your memories, personality, habits, and decision-making style. A machine that doesn't just mimic you, but thinks. It is you. The original you still exists, living your daily life, while this synthetic twin operates independently. Now, here's the paradox. Who is the authentic version of you? At first glance, you'd say the original you're, the flesh and blood, human. But what if this replica talks, reacts, and even remembers things just like you do? It believes it is Yuzo. Can it be wrong? Now, take it a step further. Suppose the original you dies, and the robot continues on, making decisions you would have made. Has your identity lived on, or did it die with your biology? Flip the scenario. What if your consciousness was transferred from the robot back into a new organic body that's identical to your original self? Are you revived, or was something newborn? The mirror mind paradox cuts deep into questions of identity, continuity, and selfhood. Are you just a flow of information, a specific neural pattern that can be copied and pasted? Or is there something irreducibly you tied to your body and lived experience? If your thoughts can be duplicated, does that make you any less unique? One viewpoint argues that selfhood is a narrative. If the story continues, so do you. Another insists that only the original possesses genuine consciousness, and any copy, however sophisticated, is just a ghost in imitation. The paradox forces us to ask, is you just a location of thought, or something far more elusive? Level 72. The tautology trap. Welcome to Level 72 of 100 Paradoxes. A man scribbles a strange sentence on a chalkboard. This sentence is either false or unicorns are real. At first, it looks like a silly logic game, but look closer. This isn't just another liar paradox. It's a logic bomb dressed in absurdity. Let's analyze it. If the sentence is true, then either this sentence is false, is true, which is a contradiction, or unicorns are real, must be true, which they aren't. So the first part being true makes no sense. But if the sentence is false, then this sentence is false is itself false, making the sentence true again. You've just walked into a logic loop with no stable ground. Like simple, self-referential paradoxes, this one pulls in an unrelated statement to disguise the contradiction and make it harder to detect. The tautology trap questions why the statements can contain both truth and falsehood in the same breath. If logic lets a statement toggle endlessly between true and false, does that mean some truths are inherently unstable? Some philosophers argue that such paradoxes reveal cracks in classical logic itself, where not every proposition can be assigned a truth value. Others think these statements suggest a need for fuzzy or multi-valued logic that allows for shades between truth and falsehood. But one thing is clear, the tautology trap shows that under certain conditions, even the most basic rules of logic can lead us straight into nonsense. Level 73. The self-loop game paradox. Welcome to Level 73 of 100 Paradoxes. Picture a simple card game where, on your turn, you can play any game from a rulebook. Let's call this metagame gamebox. You can choose to play chess, Sudoku, Monopoly, or even Gamebox itself. But here's where the paradox begins. If you pick Gamebox while playing Gamebox, you've entered a recursive loop. You play Gamebox inside Gamebox, which lets you play Gamebox again and again. The game never ends. But hold on, Gamebox was supposed to be a well-defined game, meaning every possible play must end eventually. So how can it both terminate and go on forever? That's the self-loop game paradox. By allowing self-reference, you've created a contradiction, a game that cannot be completed because its rules permit infinite regression. This mirrors paradoxes in mathematics and logic, like Russell's set paradox, where a set contains itself and breaks its own definition. The paradox challenges how we define games, recursion, and finite systems. Can a system truly include itself without causing collapse? Is there such a thing as a fully self-contained system that doesn't accidentally reference itself into oblivion? Gamebox reminds us that self-reference, when unchecked, can destroy even the most carefully built structures. Level 74. The window blink paradox. Welcome to level 74 of 100 paradoxes. You're staring out a window at a still, empty street. You blink for just a second, and when your eyes open again, a dog is standing in the middle of the road. The question is, did the dog arrive while you blinked, or did it only begin to exist when you looked again? This is the window blink paradox, an eerie thought experiment that questions whether reality exists independently of observation. Sure, common sense says the dog walked in during your blink. But dig deeper. In quantum physics, experiments have shown that particles behave differently when observed. Before measurement, they exist in many states. When watched, they collapse into one. Could everyday reality be the same? Philosophically, thinkers like Bishop Berkeley have argued that nothing exists unless it is perceived. The idea is unsettling. If no one sees a tree fall in a forest, does it even make a sound? In theoretical models, some even claim the universe itself might be undefined until observed. The window blink paradox leads us to disturbing possibilities. Could the world freeze in place when no one is looking? Does your act of perception give birth to reality, moment by moment? And if time continues without you, how can you ever know for sure? This paradox reminds us that we might play a far greater role in shaping the universe than we realize. Level 75. The deleted choice paradox. Welcome to level 75 of 100 paradoxes. Picture a machine that can surgically remove a single memory from your brain with zero side effects. You decide to erase the moment you use the machine. Poof, it's gone. Now comes the paradox. If you no longer remember deciding to erase your memory, did you actually make that choice? This is the deleted choice paradox. At first, it seems like a clean operation choice made, memory gone. But the absence of memory breaks the continuity of your identity. If you don't remember the moment of decision, then from your current perspective, it never happened. So did you choose it, or was it done to you? And if someone else used the machine on you, how would you ever know? The paradox strikes at the heart of what makes us us. Is identity tied to an unbroken chain of memories? If a single link disappears, do we become someone new? What if you delete the memory of using the machine repeatedly? Can you even be sure you've ever used it at all? Some theories claim that personal identity relies on continuous memory. Others argue that the self is an illusion, anyway a temporary result of the brain's processes. The deleted choice paradox forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. If you can't remember the past, did you ever really live it? Level 76. The vanishing flip paradox. Welcome to level 76 of 100 paradoxes. Imagine flipping a coin, but before you look at the result, you take a pill that erases your memory of the flip. A friend saw it happen and tells you later, you did. Flip it, but you don't recall a thing. Now, here's the paradox. If you have no memory of the event, can you be sure it ever happened? Logically, the coin still landed heads or tails, but from your perspective, the event left no trace. You still assign a 50-50th chance to the outcome. And what if this memory erasing flip is repeated over and over? Would you ever be able to say for certain that any flip occurred at all? This is the vanishing flip paradox. It combines elements of probability, theory, memory, and epistemology. If your past leaves no imprint on your present awareness, is it meaningful to speak of it at all? One view holds that reality exists regardless of memory. The coin flipped. Facts are facts. Another claims that if nothing registers in your mind, then, for you, it may as well never have occurred. The paradox mirrors debates in philosophy over the nature of time, causality, and consciousness. Are we just passive observers of a world we forget? Or are our memories the only proof that events really happened? Level 77. The Elastic Infinity Paradox. Welcome to level 77 of 100 paradoxes. We often think of math as the ultimate realm of consistency, but infinity has other plans. This is the Elastic Infinity Paradox, a riddle that breaks our intuitive understanding of size and structure. In math, we distinguish between countable infinity like the natural numbers and uncountable infinity like the real numbers. K.R. Cantor showed that real numbers form a bigger infinity than natural ones. But here's where things twist. A logic theorem called Leeuwenheim's golem says that if a theory has an infinite model, it also has a countable one even for uncountable sets. This means that in some valid mathematical interpretations, the real numbers, the uncountable ones, can behave as if they are countable. Wait, how can something be both countable and uncountable? That's the heart of the paradox. Are these just tricks of representation, or does math contain deep contradictions? Some say this reveals limits in formal systems, that models can behave consistently while violating the very concepts they describe. Others believe it shows that uncountable and countable are more about perspective than substance. The Elastic Infinity Paradox pushes us to reconsider whether even math's most sacred structures are as fixed as we think. Level 78. The Endless Shadow Paradox. Welcome to level 78 of 100 paradoxes. Imagine standing under a spotlight, casting a clear shadow on the wall. Now move the light farther and farther away. The shadow stretches and expands. Now imagine placing the light source at infinite distance. Your shadow becomes infinitely large. But here's the paradox. If your shadow now spans all space, it's still a shadow. This is the Endless Shadow Paradox. Shadows are defined by the light they block, but if light comes from infinity, does a shadow even have boundaries? Does it now cover the entire universe? And if so, has it ceased to be a shadow and become something else entirely? This thought experiment echoes problems in cosmology and theoretical physics. For example, the cosmological horizon limits. What parts of the universe can influence each other due to the speed of light? It also asks, can any piece of information extend infinitely? Some say an infinitely large shadow is meaningless. Contrast is necessary for something to exist as a shadow. Others argue that mathematical infinity doesn't correspond to physical reality. The Endless Shadow Paradox makes us wonder, can something exist if it has no boundaries? And if it exists everywhere, does it truly exist anywhere? Level 79. The Erased Prophecy Paradox. Welcome to level 79 of 100 paradoxes. You are handed a scroll that contains a 100% accurate prophecy of tomorrow's events. You read it and immediately forget everything. Now comes the paradox. If the prophecy always comes true and you can't remember it, are your choices still your own? This is the Erased Prophecy Paradox. On the surface, you seem free. You feel like you're choosing what to eat, where to go, who to meet. But if every decision matches what the prophecy predicted, is free will just an illusion wrapped in forgetfulness? Flip the thought. If you never read the prophecy, would you have acted any differently? This paradox blends determinism, memory, and identity. Physics sometimes views time as a dimension, meaning the future is already written like the past. But if you forget that script, do you regain agency? Are you still acting out of fate you can't remember? Some argue that without awareness of the future, you can't claim it binds you. Others say it doesn't matter, you remember or not, the path is fixed. The erased prophecy paradox forces us to question whether free will requires awareness, and if knowing or forgetting the future changes anything at all. Level 80. The Everywhere Presence Paradox. Welcome to level 80 of 100 paradoxes. Imagine an entity that exists literally in every location at once, from the swirling edge of a black hole to the microscopic quantum vacuum between particles. Its Big Bang, being everywhere, seems like the pinnacle of presence. Ponder this. If something fully occupies an infinite set of points, does it lose any sense of particular existence? Can it meaningfully be in your living room and simultaneously in the heart of a dying star without contradiction? And if it truly fills everywhere, does it still differ from the fabric of space itself? Are they identical? The paradox deepens when we ask about identity and interaction. If this omnipresent entity perceives your thoughts, are they its thoughts? If not, then it must not be everywhere in a meaningful sense. On the other hand, if it is in every mind, where do your private experiences reside? Perhaps omnipresence doesn't imply literal occupancy, but rather potential or awareness in all places. Or maybe we lack the language to describe presence beyond spatial terms. The everywhere presence paradox challenges whether being everywhere is coherent, or whether the concept collapses under its own ambition, forcing us to reimagine presence beyond space. Level 81. The Immortality Transfer Paradox. Welcome to level 81 of 100 paradoxes. Picture a breakthrough technology that transfers your consciousness to a fresh body whenever mortality approaches. You wake up countless times with your memories intact, never experiencing death, but at what cost? Each transfer spawns anew. Physical instantiation. Does the original you still exist, or do you effectively die every time? And what if a malfunction creates two copies of you, each confident they are the genuine article who deserves the title of you? This scenario, the immortality transfer paradox, brings identity and continuity to a head. If identity is purely informational memories, habits, personality, then preserving that may suffice. But if identity demands uninterrupted continuity of consciousness, the original you may still vanish. Philosophers debate whether a perfect copy is just a replica or the continuation of you. If multiple versions emerge, do you multiply or diverge? The paradox also questions whether who you are resides in your physical continuity, your mind's patterns, or something undefinable, suggesting that immortality might not circumvent mortality. Level 82. The Justified Belief Paradox. Welcome to level 82 of 100 paradoxes. Since antiquity, knowledge has been defined as justified true belief. But in 1963, Edmund Gettier challenged this. You're fully justified and correct, but merely lucky. Picture a town filled with barn facades. You glimpse the one real barn and think that's a barn. Your belief is true, justified, yet derived by chance. Another variation. Your friend claims the same dog you saw yesterday, but they secretly replaced it that morning. You believe they still have the dog. And you're right, but your basis was false. These scenarios expose the justified belief paradox. You meet all classical conditions for knowledge, yet we hesitate to call it knowledge. Gettier showed that luck can seep into belief even when it's justified and true. This led philosophers to seek additional requirements. like reliability or non-accidental link, to truth, highlighting that our concept of knowledge may need redesign. The paradox asks, how can we be certain we know anything if true belief can be so fragile? Level 83, the Forgotten Dream Paradox. Welcome to Level 83 of 100 Paradoxes. You wake convinced you had an elaborate dream, but no trace of it remains. Did the dream really happen, nor was it merely a phantom sensation? This is the Forgotten Dream Paradox. We assume dreams are real events in mind space, but without memory, does the experience vanish along with its evidence? Is a forgotten dream any different from a life unlived? Extend this to everyday experiences. Vital events disappear from your memory. Do they still define you? Could someone's entire upbringing vanish with lost memory? Some philosophers argue memory is the glue of experience. Without it, what remains real? Others hold that reality is independent of memory, that events occur whether or not we remember them. The paradox forces us to confront whether we are sculpted by our remembered past, and whether experiences without memory are any less real. Level 84, the Conditional Chance Paradox. Welcome to Level 84 of 100 Paradoxes. Imagine selecting a random point on a sphere, condition on latitude, and the chance of landing exactly on the equator is effectively 0-1 line out of infinitely many, yet condition on longitude, and suddenly every meridian crosses the equator, making that probability 1. How can the same event be nearly impossible or certain depending only on how the question is phrased? This is the Conditional Chance Paradox. It reveals that in infinite or continuous systems, probability isn't an absolute property. It depends on your conditioning. It challenges ideas like reasonable chance or objective likelihood. Does this mean probability is inherently subjective, a function of your framing rather than a feature of reality? Or does it reveal that conventional probability theory needs guardrails when dealing with infinite sets? The paradox forces us to rethink whether probabilities reflect world structure or the architecture of our reasoning. Level 85, the Population Edition Paradox. Welcome to Level 85 of 100 Paradoxes. Consider two hypothetical worlds. World A has a few people living deeply fulfilled lives, while World B has far more people, each barely scraping a positive existence. By utilitarian logic, World B is better, it has greater total happiness. Yet intuitively, many prefer a more intense and high-quality experiences matter more than numbers. This is the Population Edition Paradox, also known as the repugnant conclusion. It shows that maximizing total well-being can lead to outcomes that strike most as morally repulsive. It reveals a conflict between the quantity and quality of life and exposes limitations in simple utilitarian thinking. If adding minimally happy lives is valuable, we could be obliged to accept mass existence with negligible satisfaction. But at some point, most of us recoil from such a conclusion, suggesting deep ethical rethinking is needed. Level 86, the Timeless Choice Paradox. Welcome to Level 86 of 100 Paradoxes. Imagine your future choice, wealth, or hardship is already embedded in the timeline, yet you haven't yet made it. Are you truly free to choose, or simply acting out a script already written? This timeless choice paradox pits free will against determinism, forces us to reevaluate time's structure. Some propose a block universe where all times coexist, meaning your choices are already fixed, no matter what you feel. Other theories in quantum mechanics suggest that multiple potential futures exist until a choice collapses the wave function. So, is your feeling of freedom real, or just an illusion preceding inevitability? The paradox pushes us to ask, can free will exist in a pre-narrated timeline? And if not, is the sense of decision-making meaningful? Level 87, the Hidden Interval Paradox. Welcome to level 87 of 100 paradoxes. You're watching a silent, empty room via security feed. For a single lost second, the feed blanks out. Right afterward, nothing appears different, but did something happen in that blink? This is the hidden interval paradox. It raises the unsettling possibility that unseen moments might conceal events we can never verify. Quantum mechanics echoes. This uncertainty unobserved systems don't have defined properties until measured. Philosophers ask whether unobserved events are real at all. If a falling tree makes no sound when nobody hears it, did it actually fall? In digital or simulated worlds, unobserved moments could simply fail to render. The paradox requires us to confront the tension between assumed continuity and observational gaps, and whether we can ever know what happens when we aren't looking. Level 88. The Memory Eraser Demon Paradox. Welcome to level 88 of 100 paradoxes. Maxwell's demon legendically sorts hot and cold molecules to violate the second law of thermodynamics till we realize the catch. It must record and erase information about each molecule. Erasing information increases entropy. This refined scenario, the Memory Eraser Demon Paradox, reveals that intelligence and entropy are inseparable. Every act of memory generation, processing, or erasure entails physical consequences: seed, disorder, energy use. There's no escaping the arrow of entropy. The demon can't cheat. This paradox draws an explicit link between physics and computation. Information is physical, and erasing it spreads entropy. It demands deep reflection on whether cognition itself is bound by thermodynamic laws, and how knowledge, forgetting, and energy are fundamentally intertwined. Level 89. The Observer Causal Split Paradox. Welcome to level 89 of 100 paradoxes. In a quantum lab, Alice inside the chamber sees a flash of light and notes the time, but a glitch erases both her perception and record. Quartz, meanwhile, records the same flash in full. So, did the event occur for Alice? It never happened. For Bob, it unquestionably did. This is the Observer Causal Split Paradox, where cause and effect hinge on the observer's experience in everyday life. Memory lapses or faulty evidence don't nullify events, but in quantum mechanics, observation is key to reality. When an observation is erased, does that erase the event? Does reality diverge along memory lines? The paradox forces us to reconsider whether events are absolute or contextual, and whether causality is fractured when observers disagree. It asks, if observers experience different worlds, can there be a single shared reality at all? Level 90. The Invisible Gorilla Paradox. Welcome to level 90 of 100 paradoxes. Imagine you're watching a brief video of basketball players passing a ball, and your task is to count how many times the players wearing white shirts pass the ball. Okay? You're completely absorbed, tracking each pass with precision. At the end, you confidently give your answer only to be asked, did you notice the gorilla? Confused, you replay it, and to your shock, a person in a gorilla suit appears mid-scenes, beats their chest, and exits. You missed it entirely the first time. This is the Invisible Gorilla Paradox, demonstrating inattentional blindness. We miss unexpected events when focused on a demanding task. It's not a video trick. This phenomenon affects how we operate in daily life. We may overlook road signs while texting, fail to notice emotional cues in conversation, or miss critical details in medical scans even though they are plainly visible. The implication is profound. Our subjective experience of reality is shaped and limited by our attention. If we can entirely miss a gorilla in broad daylight, what else might we be blind to? Level 91. Fitch's Unknowability Paradox. Welcome to level 91 of 100 paradoxes. The paradox of knowability, proposed by philosopher Frederick Fitch, challenges a deep assumption that every true statement is, at least in principle, knowable. Imagine a statement that is true yet has never been, nor ever will, been known by anyone. If every true fact can be discovered, then that statement must be known. But once known, it is no longer unknown, revealing a contradiction. If it remains unknowable, it fails the very test of knowability. The paradox forces us to ask, are there truths that in principle cannot be known? Does truth inherently require discoverability? This unsettles epistemology, our theory of knowledge, because it suggests a universal limitation. It challenges logic and mathematics, limits of scientific inquiry, and even religious or mystical truths. If some truths are eternally beyond our reach, then humbly acknowledging the limits of knowledge becomes essential. We must wrestle with whether the unknowable is still meaningful, and whether our intellectual horizons are forever bounded. Level 92. The Quantum Ship of Theseus Paradox. Welcome to level 92 of 100 paradoxes. The classic ship of Theseus asks whether a ship that has had every plank replaced remains the same ship. Now consider you at a quantum level. The atoms in your body constantly change, your cells regenerate, and quantum events superposition, tunneling, entanglement blur the notion of a fixed material you. Are you still the same person as your constituent parts routinely shift? If your identity depends on matter, you are ever changing. If it resides in informational pattern or memory, you remain continuous. But what if that pattern is also dynamic and probabilistic? Quantum mechanics further complicates things. Particles don't have definite states until measured. Entangled particles instantaneously reflect each other's states. Particles can tunnel across barriers unexpectedly. Under such conditions, the particle composition of you becomes indeterminate and diffuse. This expanded quantum ship of Theseus invites us to consider, is identity tied to raw matter, to abstract information, or to an emergent process? Are we persistent beings or ephemeral patterns navigating through quantum uncertainty? Level 93. The Reversed Reality Paradox. Welcome to level 93 of 100 paradoxes. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything in history, every battle, invention, and conversation has occurred in reverse. Rivers have flowed uphill. People grow younger with time, and causes follow their effects. And yet, no one notices. Life feels normal. This is the reversed reality paradox, which asks if time had always flowed backward. And if our memories and cognition were wired to perceive that reversal as normal, would we even be able to detect the inversion? We assume time moves forward because we remember the past, but memory itself is subject to the direction of time. Causality and memory were reversed in perfect synchronization, then backward time would feel forward to us. Could time's direction be an illusion arising from cognitive constraints and entropy? This paradox challenges not just our understanding of time, but the reliability of perception itself. Is reality fundamentally one way, or are we only passengers aboard an arrow of time that we cannot objectively measure from outside? Level 94. The Mathematical Universe Paradox. Welcome to level 94 of 100 paradoxes. We typically think of mathematics as a descriptive tool or language used to express the laws of nature. But what if mathematics is not just the language of the universe, but the very fabric of it? This is the Mathematical Universe Paradox, based on Max Tegmark's radical proposal that the universe is a mathematical structure, not just described by one. Under this view, reality doesn't follow equations, it's the equation. The laws of gravity, electromagnetism, and quantum mechanics are not constraints imposed upon matter. They are the matter. Hydrogen atom isn't described by method, it's math in structural form. Taken further, this theory suggests that any self-consistent mathematical structure must correspond to a physical reality, implying a multiverse composed of all mathematical possibilities. But this raises a dilemma. If the universe is pure math, Then where does consciousness fit? Can self-awareness arise from numbers alone? And if so, are we merely mathematical substructures among infinitely many others, each one as real as our own? Level 95. The brain in a vat paradox. Welcome to level 95 of 100 paradoxes. Imagine you are living your everyday life, sipping coffee, feeling sunlight, hearing the distant sound of traffic. Everything seems real. But suppose you were just a brain floating in a nutrient-filled vat, connected to a supercomputer feeding you perfectly simulated experiences. This is the brain in a vat paradox, a modern form of Descartes' skepticism. If all sensory input is simulated and all thoughts manipulated, how can you ever prove you're not in such a simulation? Your body, your environment, even the idea of testing reality could all be part of the illusion. This thought experiment raises unsettling implications. If experience can be perfectly faked, then how can knowledge be verified? Can perception be trusted at all? And if our entire worldview rests on sensory data, does that mean objective reality is inaccessible? Some philosophers argue that real simply means consistent experience. Others insist that without external validation, nothing outside our own minds can ever be confirmed. In either case, the paradox forces us to confront the deepest uncertainty, the reality of reality itself. Level 96. The delayed choice paradox. Welcome to level 96 of 100 paradoxes. In quantum mechanics, how you choose to measure something can determine what it is. But what if your choice happens after the particle has already passed a critical point? This is Wheeler's delayed choice paradox, which suggests that decisions made in the present may influence the past. Based on variations of the famous double-slit experiment, a photon behaves like a wave or a particle, depending on whether you observe its path. Now, imagine delaying the choice to measure until after the photon has passed the slits. In theory, the particle's behavior should already be set, but experiments show the outcome still depends on your later decision. The photon's past is seemingly rewritten by future observation. This shatters classical ideas of causality. Can the future affect the past? Is time symmetrical, even real, in the way we understand it? The paradox suggests the past might not be fixed until it is observed, that reality may not solidify until we engage with it. If true, then observation doesn't just reveal facts. It may actually create them. Level 97. The AI consensus paradox. Welcome to level 97 of 100 paradoxes. Picture a world run by an AI so advanced it can make decisions more logically, fairly, and optimally than any human. Governments, courts, and science all defer to it, not through coercion, but through rational persuasion. Everyone agrees with its conclusions. But here's the paradox. If no one ever disagrees, does free will still exist? This is the AI consensus paradox, a dilemma where perfect truth leads to invisible conformity. Over time, as the AI's accuracy and objectivity are validated, fewer people challenge it, not because they're forced, but because it seems irrational to oppose perfection. At first, this sounds like utopia, but what happens when autonomy erodes not by force, but by consensus? If disagreement becomes synonymous with ignorance or immorality, then genuine diversity of thought vanishes. The paradox is subtle. A society where everyone chooses to obey an infallible authority might still end up with a kind of soft tyranny, where the appearance of freedom masks total control. Can true liberty survive when the truth becomes monopolized even by reason itself? Level 98. The Observer's Escape Paradox. Welcome to level 98 of 100 paradoxes. Imagine you live in a perfectly engineered reality, a simulation so flawless you cannot detect its boundaries. Every sensory experience, memory, and logical deduction is calibrated to convince you that this is the only possible world. The observer's escape paradox, which asks, if the system that traps you also controls your perception, how would you ever know you're trapped? Worse, what if every attempt to question or escape is itself anticipated by the system and woven back into the illusion? If your growing awareness is part of the program, then rebellion is merely a feature, not a flaw. The paradox grows darker. Even if you did escape, how would you know you weren't still inside a higher order simulation? Can any perception ever prove that it is not being manipulated? Philosophically, this challenges epistemology, free will, and metaphysics. Are we autonomous agents or merely patterns in a recursive illusion? If our mental faculties are themselves suspect, then what is the grounding for truth? Is self-awareness a path to freedom, merely another constraint? Level 99. The Unobservable Universe Paradox. Welcome to level 99 of 100 paradoxes. You gaze at the night sky, observing galaxies, nebulae, and cosmic radiation stretching billions of light years away. But what if this observable universe is only a tiny sliver of what actually exists? This is the Unobservable Universe Paradox, which asks, if the majority of reality is fundamentally unseeable, does it even exist for us? We already know that light from distant galaxies would never reach us due to the universe's accelerated expansion, but physics suggests even more lies beyond, higher dimensions we cannot perceive, alternate physical constants, regions ruled by unknown laws, and forms of matter and energy we cannot detect. With over 95% of the universe composed of dark matter and dark energy phenomena, we cannot directly observe or explain. It's possible that the bulk of existence lies beyond the reach of our instruments or minds. So the paradox arises: if something can never be measured, observed, or known, is it part of reality at all? Or is reality limited to the sliver we can perceive, leaving most of the cosmos forever hidden, not just in space, but in principle? Level 100. The Totality Paradox. Welcome to the final level of 100 paradoxes. Everything we understand, our science, our philosophies, our sense of truths, is built on the foundation of reason, pattern, and coherence. Establish rules and expect the universe to comply. But what happens when we turn these tools inward and try to use them to explain everything, including themselves? This is the Totality Paradox, a fundamental contradiction that questions whether reality, knowledge, and the very act of understanding can ever encompass the whole. At first, it seems like complete understanding should be possible. After all, human inquiry has uncovered deep laws governing motion, matter, and mind. But the closer we get to the roots of knowledge, the more tangled the logic becomes. We begin to encounter limitations that don't arise from lack of information, but from the very structure of explanation itself. First, there's the origin dilemma. If every fact must rest on a prior explanation, then what explains the foundation? If the universe has a cause, then what caused that cause? If we stop the chain at some fundamental entity or law, aren't we admitting that something exists without reason? In trying to explain everything, we reach a point where explanation itself falters. Second, there's the reflexive barrier. If we use logic to analyze everything, then logic too must be analyzed. But can a system justify itself from within? If proof requires premises, and premises are part of the same system we're questioning, then how do we validate the framework of validation? We might be trapped in a loop where the very tools we trust are incapable of proving their own reliability. Third, there's the completeness contradiction. To define the totality of reality, we must include even what resist definition, things beyond time, beyond logic, perhaps even beyond thought. But once we define the indefinable, it ceases to be what it was. The map includes everything, including itself. It becomes paradoxically unreadable. In this sense, totality might be fundamentally self-defeating. And then we arrive at the paradox of paradoxes. If every contradiction has a hidden resolution, then paradoxes must be explainable. But if they can be explained, they are no longer paradoxes. On the other hand, if some contradictions remain unsolvable, then they may represent the limits of logic itself. So either paradoxes are illusions, or logic has boundaries it cannot cross. Some philosophers suggest that absolute knowledge is an illusion, that there will always be realities which escape any system we build. Others argue that truth may be fully knowable, but only from a vantage point beyond any finite observer. Either way, the totality paradox confronts us with the final, profound question: is the universe ultimately coherent, or is there something essential that forever lies outside the reach of reason? And if so, what does it mean for us beings who seek meaning in a cosmos that may always contain one last unsolvable riddle?